Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426, Respective Plans. General Hipper, lead the first battle cruiser detachment to set off. Now that the main force of the British has left Scapa Flow, they are no longer shrinking turtles. Then, let's have this final decisive battle with them. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, Your Excellency Commander. Lieutenant General Hipper had been looking forward to this battle for a long time. Although, the strength of the British Navy has been weakened a lot by them. However, the number of its dozens of capital ships is still amazing. If the British Navy can be severely damaged, or even wiped out in this battle, very fruitful results can still be achieved. General Hipper, it is still the old rule: you encounter the main British fleet, then retreat and lead them to the main fleet. If you encounter the British squadron, if you can eat them, these capital ships of the British will be sunk before we can completely win this naval battle. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, General. Lieutenant General Hipper nodded. Although the number 1 battle cruiser unit he led had 3 powerful battleships like the Mackensen class battle cruisers, there were only 6 in total after all. If they encounter the main force of the British Navy, they will not be able to eat it. The British now only have 6 battle cruisers left. If they eat them all, the next battle will be much easier. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. There are not many remaining capital ships of the British Navy, although most of those battle cruisers are thin-skinned battleships. However, it has to be admitted that those warships are very fast. If these battle cruisers are lost, the British Navy will lose its fast battleships. I have given an order to General Spee. His 2nd battle cruiser squadron will abandon the attack on the British coastal cities and cooperate with your actions. Anyway, if we can completely defeat the British Navy, whether to attack the British coastal cities? Cities are meaningless. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, General. After the Royal Navy is dealt with by us, we can land on the British mainland when the army defeats the British and French allied forces. At that time, these coastal cities will be occupied by us. We can even use the British shipbuilding capabilities to improve our own shipbuilding system, Hipper said. Indeed, in terms of shipbuilding strength, Britain is indeed above Germany. If Germany hadn't taken a shortcut in terms of warships, because of Qin Tian, it would have been impossible for them to catch up with the Royal Navy. After defeating the United Kingdom, it is just possible to use the shipbuilding capabilities of the United Kingdom to enhance Germany's shipbuilding capabilities, making Germany the veritable number 1 power in shipbuilding. Half an hour later, Lieutenant General Hipper led the 6 battle cruisers of the 1st battle cruiser squadron to set off. 3 Mackensen class battle cruisers, 3 Blücher class battle cruisers, plus several light cruisers and destroyers, left the huge fleet and headed north. According to the information received, the British fleet set off from Scapa Flow and headed south. In this case, at dawn tomorrow morning, they will probably be able to encounter the British Navy. On the other side, the 2nd battle cruiser squadron of the German Navy also ended its bombardment of Dundee. After Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee received the telegram from Admiral Reinhard Scheer, a smile appeared on his face. The British finally came out. This time, I don't have to continue to attack their coastal cities and bear the infamy of a butcher, Lieutenant General Spee said with a smile. Being able to fight against the British Navy is naturally more exciting for him than attacking British coastal cities. Command the fleet to go north at full speed, Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. The 3 Der Flieger class battle cruisers and 3 Moltke class battle cruisers of the 2nd battle cruiser squadron immediately went north, preparing to face the Royal Navy. Both the British Navy and the German Navy knew that this battle was inevitable, and they never thought about avoiding it. Therefore, when both sides have the desire to fight, the outbreak of this decisive naval battle is inevitable. On the morning of March 21st, a seaplane of the German Navy spotted the British fleet heading south in the sea 100 kilometers east of Fraserburg. 6 battle cruisers headed south quickly under the protection of a group of light cruisers and destroyers. The seaplane immediately reported the situation to the flagship, and at the same time, prepared to patrol around to see if there were any warships of the British Navy. However, they were intercepted by the British seaplane. Under the siege of several seaplanes of the British Navy, the German seaplanes had to withdraw from this sea area. On the battlecruiser Tiger of the British Navy, Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty looked serious. In this battle, their disadvantage is really too great. So much so that he had to be careful with every step he took. General, the German seaplane flew away. A staff officer reported to Lieutenant General David Beatty, "Well, tell the 2nd Battleship Squadron to speed up and keep a distance of about 20 kilometers from us. The Germans have spotted us, so their fleet should arrive soon. Hopefully, they will only send a few ships. Battle cruisers are coming to deal with us," Lieutenant General David Beatty said. If the German Navy only sent a few battle cruisers, then their strategy would be successful. At that time, the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships of the 2nd Battleship Squadron will become a surprise force. After raiding the side of the German fleet, they will win the battle in one fell swoop. Of course, if all 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy arrive, then Lieutenant General David Beatty will have to retreat. Facing all the battle cruisers of the German Navy, even with the addition of 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, they are definitely not opponents. After fighting against the German Navy's battle cruisers twice, Lieutenant General David Beatty knew how powerful these battle cruisers were. "Yes, General." On the other side, the 1st battle cruiser formation of the German Navy also obtained this information. After learning the location of the battle cruiser formation of the British Navy, Lieutenant General Hipper immediately ordered the 1st battle cruiser squadron to speed up. "Order the fleet to prepare for battle. The British are less than 2 hours away from us. In an hour, we will most likely start a firefight. Also, send a telegram to General Spee to speed up, and we will encircle and wipe out together. Drop the British battle cruiser." Lieutenant General Hipper excitedly gave the order. Chapter 427, Battle Cruiser Duel. The battle cruiser squadron of the British Royal Navy and the 1st battle cruiser squadron of the German Navy are only tens of kilometers apart, which is almost a 2-hour voyage. However, when the two sides meet each other, it only takes 1 hour for the two sides to encounter each other. Both sides have 6 battle cruisers, but the performance of the ships of the German Navy's 1st battle cruiser squadron is obviously stronger than that of the British Navy's battle cruisers. This point has been proved in previous naval battles. The source of confidence for Vice Admiral David Beatty is undoubtedly the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships. If it hadn't been attacked by the German Navy, so that the 2 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships were severely damaged, then the British Navy's 2nd battleship detachment should be composed of 5 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships. The Navy has a better chance of winning. As time passed by, the distance between the two sides was also getting closer. At 9 o'clock in the morning, a German destroyer reported that it had discovered the battle cruiser detachment of the British Navy. "All ships are ready for battle." Lieutenant General Hipper immediately issued an order for combat readiness. 3 Mackinson-class battle cruisers and 3 Blücher-class battle cruisers raised their guns one after another, preparing to use powerful artillery fire to send all the battle cruisers of the British Navy to the bottom of the North Sea go. At the same time, the British Navy's battle cruiser detachment also discovered the German fleet. Report to the General, found 6 German battle cruisers. After 10 minutes, they will enter our range. A staff officer reported to Lieutenant General David Beatty. "Very good." Sure enough, only 6 German battle cruisers were encountered. God bless the British Empire. A trace of ecstasy flashed across Lieutenant General David Beatty's face. Only 6 battle cruisers of the German Navy were encountered, which is undoubtedly the best result. He believed that with the 6 battle cruisers in his hands plus 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, he could definitely defeat the 6 battle cruisers of the German Navy. HMPH. The Germans are too conceited. Do they think they can eat us with only 6 battle cruisers? Soon, we will let them know that the Royal Navy is not so easy to defeat. David Beatty will snort coldly. Although the current overall situation is still very unfavorable to them, it will be very helpful to improve their chances of winning if they can win the first game and eliminate a few battle cruisers of the German Navy. At the same time, he can finally get rid of his shame. Order all ships and prepare for battle. Today will be our day of shame. In addition, let the 2nd battle cruiser detachment outflank the rear of the Germans. This time, we will send the 6 Germans battle cruisers. Stay here. Lieutenant General David Beatty ordered. Queen Elizabeth class battleships are very fast, with a maximum speed of 24 knots. Although they are not as fast as battle cruisers, they are not much different. It is undoubtedly the most suitable task, to perform the task of outflanking the rear. Coupled with the powerful 381mm main gun on the Queen Elizabeth class battleship, this gave Lieutenant General David Beatty even more confidence. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty didn't know that they were not the only ones who had reinforcement. The 6 battle cruisers of the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the German Navy are also on their way quickly. The German Navy's 1st Battle Cruiser Squadron and the British Navy's Battle Cruiser Squadron are getting closer and closer, and the battleships of both sides are lined up in a battle line. At a distance of more than 10 kilometers, they began to turn at the same time and headed northeast. Lieutenant General David Beatty did this in order to further narrow the distance with his own main fleet. Lieutenant General Hipper didn't care about this. He ordered the Communications Corps to report the situation to the flagship. Since the British are trying to lead them to their main force, let the main force of the German Navy follow up, and everyone will directly have a main force duel. Anyway, the German Navy clearly has an advantage in this duel. Even if it is a main force duel, they will not suffer a loss, but will take advantage of it. Ready to fight. When the distance between the two sides was shortened to 15 kilometers, the battle officially began. On the battle line of the German Navy, there are Mackensen, Prince Frederick, Friedrich Karl, Blücher, and von der Tann and the Leopold. The battle line of the British Navy is followed by the Tiger, Queen Mary, Royal Princess, New Zealand, Invincible and Indomitable. Boom. 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 The flagship Mackensen battle cruiser took the lead in the test firing. 5 of the 3 triple-mounted 380mm main guns started firing. Armor-piercing projectiles weighing more than 1 ton roared and followed smashed towards the British warship more than 10 kilometers away. The other 5 battle cruisers also suited and started shooting. It's just that the 305mm main gun of the Blücher class battle cruiser has a very low hit rate at such a long distance. Start shelling. Lieutenant General David Beatty also issued an order. This time, he did not open fire after closing the distance as before, because he already knew that the bombardment level of the German Navy was no worse than that of the Royal Navy, or even stronger. Although the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy are well trained and passed down for hundreds of years, they have a strong will to fight. Under such circumstances, it is undoubtedly very difficult for the German Navy to surpass the British Navy in terms of soldier quality. Fortunately, with the advancement of technology, the role of manpower in warfare has become smaller and smaller. The quality of soldiers in the German Navy is certainly not as good as that of the British Navy. However, relying on advanced technologies, such as advanced sighting equipment and fire control systems, they are not inferior to the British Navy in terms of gunnery, and even have an advantage. Boom. 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 The battle cruisers on both sides began to fire violently. One after another, the shells roared and smashed towards the opponent's battleship. The shell exploded on the sea, splashing jets of water into the sky. The entire ocean seemed to be boiling. God bless the British Empire. We must defeat the Germans in this battle. Lieutenant General David Beatty prayed to God secretly. This battle is really important to them. Even if failure is still unavoidable in the end, he also hopes to cause enough damage to the German Navy. Chapter 428, Still Abused. Boom. 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 On the surface of the North Sea, the sound of cannons rumbled. The battle cruisers of the German Navy and the British Navy are firing crazily, intending to use powerful shells to hit the opposing battleship and sink it. Boom. A cannonball landed on the sea, splashing a jet of water into the sky. This is a 380mm shell. Although it is an armor-piercing projectile, the power after the explosion is still very amazing. Damn the Germans, they actually equipped so many warships with 380mm main guns. Why didn't we expect such a situation before? Lieutenant General David Beatty sighed in his heart. The Royal Navy has always been at the forefront of the world, and they lead the development of the world navy. But this time, they fell behind the German Navy, and the consequences of this will be disastrous. Once the Royal Navy loses in this naval battle, the British Empire will pay an extremely heavy price for it. Even, the empire will be destroyed because of this, and it will become a small third-rate country from then on. The 380mm artillery shells fired by the German Navy are amazingly powerful. Don't say that the battle cruisers of the British Navy are thin-skinned battleships. Even their battleships are absolutely irresistible. The only thing the British Navy can do is to pray to God and pray that those shells will not hit them. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious. It's just that God doesn't hear the prayers of his believers in many cases. Only 5 minutes after the war started, the battlecruiser Prince Frederick of the German Navy took the lead in forming a straddle. A shell exploded on the sea surface to the left of the battlecruiser Queen Mary. Although, this shell is more than 200 meters away from the Queen Mary, but still let the British Navy sailors on the battleship look as hen. Good job. Lieutenant General Hipper couldn't help cheering. After forming a straddle, the battlecruiser Prince Frederick immediately changed from test firing to salvo. 3 triple-mounted 380mm main guns began to fire with full force. Each salvo can almost smash 10-ton shells on the battleship Queen Mary. The power of the 380mm armor-piercing projectile is astonishing. Once it hits, it can easily tear the weak armor of the Queen Mary battleship. Damn it. The luck of the Germans is still so good. Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't help cursing. There was also a faint bad feeling in his heart. If the luck of the German Navy is still so good, I'm afraid that even with the help of 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, they may not be able to win. In the opinion of Lieutenant General David Beatty, the combat effectiveness of the Queen Elizabeth-class battleships is probably equivalent to that of the German Navy's Mackensen-class battlecruisers. General, the distance is too far. Our gunners, it is difficult to hit the target. A staff officer said. Lieutenant General David Beatty hesitated for a moment, and then ordered, "Close are the distance between the two sides. Let the gunners perform as well as possible. Whether we can kill the German warships depends on them." Yes, General. In order to increase the hit rate, the British fleet began to turn, trying to get a hit by shortening the distance. It's just that, in this case, the hit rate of the German fleet will be further improved at the same time. Lieutenant General Hipper stood on the bridge of the battleship Mackensen and put down the binoculars in his hand. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seems that the British have not changed at all from before. Don't they know that the closer the distances, it is also very beneficial to us? The armor of our battlecruisers can withstand their main guns, and the armor of their battlecruisers, in front of our main guns, is like paper. Lieutenant General Hipper said with a smile. General, the British must think they can get more hits. An officer laughed. The other officers immediately burst out laughing. The distance between the two sides kept getting closer, and soon, the distance was only 13,000 meters. As the distance gets closer, the hit rate of both sides is also constantly improving. However, no matter how you look at it, it seems to be more beneficial to the German Navy. Less than 20 minutes after the battle started, the 6 battle cruisers of the German Navy completed straddle shots one after another. Similarly, all but 2 of the 6 battle cruisers of the British Navy completed the straddle. The battle cruisers on both sides began to focus their fire, which made the naval battle more intense. Boom. There was a loud noise, and a huge fireball erupted from the bow of the battle cruiser Friedrich Carroll of the German Navy. The battlecruiser Royal Princess of the British Navy scored its first hit, and it was also the first hit of this naval battle. The 343mm artillery shell directly blasted a large hole on the bow deck of the battleship Friedrich Carroll, and ignited a raging fire. Haha. Well done. God bless the British Empire. Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't help but smile when he saw that his warship scored the first hit. The uneasiness in my heart seemed to have disappeared. It seems that our luck is very good. Maybe we can still win this naval battle. Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't help but look forward to it. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty was obviously happy too early. The Royal Princess did not cause much damage to the Friedrich Carroll. Even the combat effectiveness of the Frederick Carroll was not affected in any way. Although the British Navy scored the first hit, the German Navy then retaliated. Boom. 2 minutes later, the Prince Friedrich scored its first hit in this naval battle. A 380mm artillery shell hit the side of the battlecruiser Queen Mary, directly gnawing off a large piece of its hull. If it hadn't been for the place where it was hit above the waterline, the Queen Mary would have been in disaster. 5 minutes later, the battlecruiser Blucher of the German Navy hit the battlecruiser New Zealand of the British Navy. Only 1 minute apart, the battlecruiser Frederick Carroll successfully retaliated against the battlecruiser Royal Princess. Or 380mm artillery shell shot the stern main turret of the battlecruiser Royal Princess. It was turned over. Although no further damage was caused, it did cause the Royal Princess to lose a quarter of its firepower. Seeing this scene, Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't laugh anymore. Chapter 429. The situation is unfavorable. On the British battlecruiser Tiger, Lieutenant General David Beatty's face was already gloomy, as if water could drip out. His own warships were hit one after another, making the smile on his face disappear completely because the battlecruiser Royal Princess hit the battlecruiser Frederick Carroll. It seems that God did not bless them. In front of the German Navy, they are still at a disadvantage. Bastard. How could this be? How could the Germans suddenly act so tough? Lieutenant General David Beatty was about to grit his teeth. Although, no battleships have been lost yet. However, if it continues like this, I'm afraid that it will not be long before they will suffer losses. Although, as the distance continued to narrow, the hit rate of the British Navy gradually began to increase. But at the same time, the hit rate of the German Navy has been significantly improved. The rate of improvement far exceeds that of the British Navy. On the battlecruiser Mackensen, Lieutenant General Hipper had a smile on his mouth. He was very satisfied with the performance of the fleet. Very good, keep firing, Lieutenant General Hipper said. He has become more and more confident in this naval battle. General, the distance has been shortened to 12,000 meters. Do we need to further shorten the distance? A general asked. Lieutenant General Hipper shook his head. No need, 12,000 meters is already our best shooting distance. If it were a little closer, the lethality of the British shells would be great. We to sink the British warships, but at the same time, we also need to preserve our own warships as much as possible. The British Navy's shells have fuses that are too sensitive and will explode immediately after hitting the target. The German Navy already knows it. Of course, this was revealed by Qin Tian. Because the armor of capital ships is generally very thick, to cause enough damage to such a warship, it is necessary to use armor-piercing projectiles. The explosion occurred after the shell penetrated the armor of the enemy battleship. This will cause more damage. The artillery shells used by the German Navy are capped armor-piercing shells designed by Qin Tian, which undoubtedly can ensure that the armor-piercing shells can penetrate the armor of an enemy warship after hitting it. However, due to design flaws, the shells of the British Navy exploded immediately when the shells hit the target, and it was difficult to penetrate the armor. Naturally, it was impossible to cause too much damage to the warships of the German Navy. In this regard, the German Navy undoubtedly took advantage of it. After the distance between the two sides was shortened to 12,000 meters, the British Navy wanted to further shorten the distance. However, it failed. The German Navy clearly wanted to maintain this engagement distance. Under such circumstances, the British Navy has nothing to do. After all, the speed of the two sides is almost the same, and it is impossible to rely on speed to shorten the distance. And this made the British Navy battlecruiser formation led by Vice Admiral David Beatty gradually fell into a disadvantage as time went by. Boom. There was a loud noise, and Lieutenant General David Beatty only felt a sudden shaking under his feet, and he fell to the deck at once. Damn it, we were hit. Lieutenant General David Beatty's face changed drastically. A shell fired from the battlecruiser Mackensen, the flagship of the 1st Battlecruiser Squadron of the German Navy, successfully hit the battlecruiser Tiger. Although the Tiger battlecruiser is the most powerful battlecruiser currently in service in the British Navy, it is undoubtedly far behind the Mackensen class battlecruiser. The 380mm shells fired by the battlecruiser Mackensen were simply not something the armor of the battlecruiser Tiger could resist. You know, the armor of the battlecruiser Tiger is only 254mm at its thickest point. Where was it? What happened to the loss? Lieutenant General David Beatty asked anxiously. General, the side was hit, and a 152mm secondary gun was lost. Several other sailors were killed. Soon, a staff officer reported. David? Beatty Lieutenant General then breathed a sigh of relief. Such damage is nothing to a warship with a displacement of nearly 30,000 tons. However, Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty was also a little worried. The warships of the German Navy had already scored hits, so they would definitely hit them one after another in the future. Send a telegram to General Benjamin. We are now suppressed by the Germans. We need them to rush to the battlefield as soon as possible and cooperate with us to pinch the Germans. Lieutenant General David Beatty ordered. Now that the situation is becoming more and more unfavorable to them, Lieutenant General David Beatty had no choice but to pin his hopes of defeating the German Navy on the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships of the 2nd Battleship Squadron. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately went to send a telegram. Boom. 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 The fierce battle is still going on, and the 1st Battlecruiser Squadron of the German Navy has completely gained the upper hand in the battle with the Battlecruiser Squadron of the British Navy. Boom. The Battlecruiser Invincible of the British Navy was blown up with an earth-shattering bang. What's going on? Lieutenant General David Beatty saw this scene and couldn't help being dumbfounded. Although the Battlecruiser Invincible is the weakest battlecruiser, it is definitely an indispensable and important force in this naval battle. The lack of such a battlecruiser will put them in an even more disadvantageous position in this naval battle. General, the number 1 main turret of the Invincible was hit. It seems that the ammunition depot also exploded, a staff officer said. Lieutenant General David Beatty's face suddenly showed a dejected look. As the first-class battlecruiser of the British Navy, the Invincible-class battlecruiser has serious design flaws. The one-sided pursuit of speed and firepower made the defense of the Invincible battlecruiser very bad. Except for the armor of the conning tower, which is 254mm thick, the turret and waterline armor are only 152mm thick. With such a defensive power, even armored cruisers can't resist it, let alone the main guns of battleships. The battlecruiser Invincible became the first battleship to be sunk in this naval battle. This also left the British Navy's battlecruiser unit with only 5 battlecruisers left. Moreover, after the battlecruiser Invincible was sunk, the battlecruiser Indomitable, which also belonged to the Invincible battlecruiser, was attacked by the battlecruiser von der Tann of the German Navy in the siege of the battlecruiser Leopold. Chapter 430, Encounter. Rear Admiral Benjamin, commander of the 2nd Battleship Squadron of the British Navy, is responsible for commanding 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships. What made him depressed was that his 2nd Battleship Detachment originally had 5 powerful battleships. But now, there are only 3 left. Damn the Germans, if they hadn't resorted to despicable and shameless sneak attacks, our battleships Warspite and Warrior would not have been severely damaged. Major General Benjamin gritted his teeth when he thought of this. This reduced his commanding power by 40%. Otherwise, in this naval battle, their chances of winning will be much higher. General, His Excellency the Chief of Staff ordered us to rush to the battlefield as soon as possible. They were suppressed by the Germans. A communications officer reported. Rear Admiral Benjamin couldn't help frowning. The battle has just begun, and the battlecruiser squad can't hold on anymore. The German combat effectiveness seems to be stronger than we imagined. Order all ships to speed up. Rear Admiral Benjamin ordered. Since the battlecruisers are in trouble, this makes them have to speed up to the battlefield. If the battlecruiser formation is defeated, or if the losses are too great, they will not be able to complete the intended combat objectives. The 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships began to speed up and rush to the battlefield. It's just that, because their previous mission was to attack the rear of the German Navy's 1st Battlecruiser Squadron, they had to make a big circle. This made it take them almost an hour to arrive at the battlefield after receiving the telegram from Lieutenant General David Beatty. Of course, in Major General Benjamin's view, the battlecruiser detachment led by Lieutenant General David Beatty should have no problem holding on for an hour. Rear Admiral Benjamin believed that once the fleet he led arrived on the battlefield, the situation would definitely be reversed. He is still very confident in the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship. The power of its 381mm main gun is not small enough to penetrate the armor of the battlecruisers of the German Navy. However, what Major General Benjamin didn't know was that they were not the only ones who had reinforcement. The 1st Battlecruiser Squadron of the German Navy also had reinforcement. The 6 battle cruisers of the 2nd Battleship Squadron of the German Navy are also on their way to the battlefield. Lieutenant General Hipper, when they sank the British Navy's invincible battle cruiser, also sent a telegram to Lieutenant General Spee, asking him to rush to the battlefield as soon as possible. Of course, Lieutenant General Hipper did not ask for help, but hoped that Lieutenant General Spee could arrive in time to block the British retreat. In this way, they will be able to eat all of these British battle cruisers in one fell swoop. Lieutenant General Hipper was worried that once they sank more British battle cruisers, the British would be scared and flee in embarrassment. In that case, it will not be conducive to their further expansion of the results of the war. Lieutenant General Hipper believes that once the 2nd battle cruiser detachment arrives, there will be no problem at all to encircle and annihilate the Japanese battle cruiser detachment. Boom. The British Navy's Queen Mary battle cruiser hit the German Navy's Prince Frederick. The 343mm main gun directly hit the number 1 main turret of the Prince Frederick. Hooray, well done. Lieutenant General David Beatty just saw this scene and couldn't help cheering. God bless the British Empire. Kill the German battleship. The other officers on the battle cruiser Tiger also cheered. However, soon their smiles freeze on their faces. Because, when the smoke cleared, the battle cruiser Prince Frederick of the German Navy was completely safe and sound. Damn, what's going on? Our shells didn't penetrate the turrets of the German warships. How is this possible? A British naval officer exclaimed. God, how do you fight this, David? The expression on Lieutenant General Beatty's face also became gloomy. Even if their shells hit the target, they cannot damage it. In this case, there is no way for them to continue fighting. It won't be long before their warships will be sunk one after another. When the Prince Frederick was hit, Lieutenant General Hipper was also shocked. This is their main battleship. If it is severely damaged, or even sunk because of this, the consequences will be disastrous. Although, the top brass of the German Navy knew that in a decisive battle with the British Navy, it was impossible for them not to lose a single warship. However, in order to deal with other potential enemies, the German Navy still hopes to lose as few warships as possible. Only in that way can the German Navy continue to maintain a strong strength to deal with other enemies. General, the number 1 turret of the Prince Friedrich was hit, but it was not penetrated. But the huge explosion still killed the gunner inside. An officer told Lieutenant General Hipper reported. Lieutenant General Hipper was relieved. Immediately afterwards, 10 minutes later, the German navies von der Tann and Leopold joined forces to sink the British Royal Navy's indomitable battle cruiser, making the British navies the loss rose to 2 ships. Of course, this is also because the battle cruiser unyielding is also one of the invincible battle cruisers, and the defense is too bad. Otherwise, it would not have been sunk so easily. 2 battle cruisers were sunk successively, giving the German Navy an even greater advantage in the 1st battle cruiser formation. Lieutenant General Hipper even ordered 3 Blücher-class battle cruisers to besiege the British Navy's New Zealand battle cruiser in order to further expand their lead. God, how long will it take for General Benjamin and the others to arrive? We will soon be unable to hold on. Lieutenant General David Beatty was very anxious. The strength of the German Navy made him even more worried about the next step. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty soon knew that the reinforcement he was expecting would never come. The 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the British Navy encountered the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the German Navy on its way to the battlefield. Without further ado, Lieutenant General Spee immediately ordered the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron to launch a siege against the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the British Navy. It is undoubtedly an excellent opportunity to use 6 battle cruisers to deal with the British 3 battleships. Chapter 431, Reinforcement vs Reinforcement. General, it can already be concluded that the 3 battleships belong to the British Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, and they are all the most cutting-edge battleships. An officer reported excitedly to Lieutenant General Spee. The Queen Elizabeth-class battleship? However, I'm very curious, how did they appear here? The corners of Lieutenant General Spee's mouth rose slightly, showing a hint of a smile. General, the battlefield between the 1st Battle Cruiser Squadron and the British Battle Cruiser Squadron is just to the north. Obviously, the British are planning to use these 3 battleships to carry out a surprise attack on our 1st Battle Cruiser Squadron. The officer laughed too. Haha. It seems that our luck was good, and we broke through the tricks of the British. The Queen Elizabeth class battleships are the most cutting-edge battleships of the British. Our Derfliner class battle cruisers are no better than is it bad? Lieutenant General Spee asked. General, according to the information we have obtained, the British Navy's Queen Elizabeth class battleships are equipped with 4 twin-mounted 42 caliber 381mm main guns. In terms of armor, the main armor belt is 330mm thick, and the turret armor is 330mm. The armor of the conning tower is 280mm. The British is 42 times the 381mm main gun is much weaker than the 50 times the 380mm main gun of our Derfliner class battle cruiser. Defense on the other hand, the main armor thickness of the Derfliner class battle cruisers is 350mm, which is thicker than that of the British Queen Elizabeth class battleships, a staff officer said. In other words, our Derfliner class battle cruisers have stronger comprehensive combat capabilities? Lieutenant General Spee said. Yes, General. However, the gap is not very big. Their Queen Elizabeth class battleships will also pose a threat to us. Lieutenant General Spee nodded. In this case, let's fight. Go after them and intercept them. Then, kill them. We have 6 battle cruisers, 2 of them will fight one, and we will get rid of them as quickly as possible. Yes, General. The officers replied one after another. The 6 battle cruisers of the 2nd Battle Cruiser Squadron of the German Navy quickly caught up. Although, the speed of the Queen Elizabeth class battleship is not slow. However, in front of the battle cruisers, which are known for their speed, they are still at a disadvantage. At this time, Rear Admiral Benjamin, the commander of the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron, was also getting angry. Damn it, why did you encounter a German warship here? Or a full 6 battle cruisers? Rear Admiral Benjamin was very annoyed. Originally, his mission was to attack the German Navy's 1st Battle Cruiser Squadron. In his opinion, his sneak attack is very likely to succeed when his own battle cruiser detachment has attracted the attention of the German Navy's 1st Battle Cruiser Detachment. However, I didn't expect it to turn out like this. General, the German battle cruisers are catching up. What should we do? Major General Benjamin's brows were tightly knit together. With the speed of the Queen Elizabeth class battle cruiser, it is impossible to escape. Then, it seems that they have only one way left, and that is to fight with all their strength. The German battle cruisers are very powerful. Not only are they fast, they have strong firepower, and their defense is also terrifying. However, how can there be such a perfect battleship in the world? Even the battle cruisers of the British Empire have to guarantee their speed and firepower. Therefore, the German battle cruisers must be like this. In the previous naval battles, there were no battle cruisers that could sink the Germans. The main reason is that our firepower is not strong enough. Now the Queen Elizabeth class battle cruisers are equipped with 381mm main guns, which must be able to penetrate the defenses of the German battle cruisers. Therefore, even if the German battle cruisers have twice the advantage, if they really want to fight, we may not have no chance of winning. Major General Benjamin secretly analyzed. Of course, he didn't know that the battle cruisers of the German Navy were mainly based on new power equipment in order to increase their speed and at the same time strengthen their firepower and defense. The heavy oil boiler and the new steam turbine enable the battleship to have sufficient power and ensure high speed. Send a telegram to General Betty. We have encountered 6 German battle cruisers, and now we are unable to reinforce them. Major General Benjamin ordered. Under such circumstances, he naturally had no way to rush to join Lieutenant General David Betty. What's more, even a confluence would not change anything. They were still at an absolute disadvantage. Even, they will be under the siege of the Germans. Only his 2nd Battleship Division defeated the German Navy's 2nd Battle Cruiser Division to reverse the situation. Yes, General. Order. Ships, reduce speed. Prepare to fight. Tell the brave officers and men of the Royal Navy that we can't escape now. For the honor of the British Empire, we must let the Germans fight. Only by defeating they will we have a front line. Live. Major General Benjamin ordered. Yes, General. After the order was issued, the 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships of the British Navy began to reduce their speed and lined up in battle formation. The actions of the British Navy made General Spee, who had been following them, very satisfied. Order all ships and prepare to fight. Since the British are not going to flee, let's fight them in a fair and honest manner. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. No matter what, in this battle, the German Navy has a great advantage. The combat power of the 3 Der Flieger class battle cruisers is not inferior to that of the Queen Elizabeth class battleships. At the same time, there are 3 Molt class battle cruisers in cooperation, which makes them almost in the same position defeated. Although, the armor of the Queen Elizabeth class battle cruisers of the British Navy is as thick as 330mm. However, the 50 caliber 343mm main gun equipped on the Molt class battle cruiser can still penetrate it. With both sides intending to fight, the 2 battle lines began to draw closer rapidly. Soon, the distance was shortened to 15,000 kilometers. Fire. The German Navy was still the first to open fire. The 380mm main guns of the 3 Der Flieger class ships roared and smashed the shells weighing more than 1 ton at the 3 Queen Elizabeth ships of the British Navy class battleship. The 3 Molt class battle cruisers also fired after them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432, Besieged. Assign attack targets. Battlecruiser Der Flieger and Battlecruiser Lutzow attack battleship Queen Elizabeth. Battlecruiser Hindenburg and Battlecruiser Moltke attack Battlecruiser Lem battleship. Moltke battlecruiser and Sedlitz battlecruiser attack the battleship Malayan. Lieutenant General Spee quickly issued an order. The 2nd battlecruiser squadron of the German Navy has 6 battlecruisers. Facing the 3 battleships of the British Navy, it can fight 2 against 1. This put the 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships of the British Navy in a state of siege during this battle. Fight back. Focus on attacking the 3 Der Flieger class battle cruisers of the Germans and sink them. The remaining 3 Molt class battle cruisers are nothing to worry about, Benjamin said the Major General. In his eyes, it is obvious that the Der Flieger class battle cruiser equipped with a 380mm main gun is more threatening. Therefore, he ordered a direct attack on the 3 Der Flieger class battle cruisers. Turn a blind eye to the 3 Molt class battle cruisers. Of course, this also made him suffer a lot in the next battle. Boom. 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 The 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships of the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron also launched a fierce counter-attack with 381mm main guns and began to roar. However, the 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships have a total of only 24 381mm main guns, and they have to face 27 380mm main guns and 27 343mm main guns. This put the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron at a disadvantage almost from the beginning. One after another, the shells cut through the air, making a sharp and piercing whistling sound. After the shell hit the sea hard, jets of water splashed into the sky. It can be said that this naval battle has directly reached its climax from the very beginning. Lieutenant General Spee stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Der Flieger, watching the battle motionless. The British gave up attacking our Molt class battle cruisers, but put all their attack power on our Der Flieger class battle cruisers? Lieutenant General Spee found something wrong. However, a smile appeared on his face afterward. The British Navy has only 3 battleships, so they can only selectively attack some of the German Navy's warships, and cannot attack all of them. However, they chose to attack the Der Flieger class battle cruiser first, which was undoubtedly a huge mistake. After all, the Der Flieger class battle cruisers had stronger defenses, and even facing the British 381mm main gun, they are not irresistible. The choice of the British allowed the 3 Molt class battle cruisers of the German Navy to launch attacks almost without interference. In this case, the possibility of getting a hit will undoubtedly be greater. Give orders to the 3 Molt class battle cruisers. Since the firepower of the 3 Queen Elizabeth class battleships of the British has been dragged by us, it will be up to them next. Let them fire with full force. Kill the 3 British battleships. Lieutenant General Spee ordered. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately went to send a telegram. Indeed, the current battlefield undoubtedly gave the 3 Molt-class battlecruisers of the German Navy an excellent opportunity to display their strength. 343mm main gun may be difficult to penetrate the 330mm armor of the British Navy's Queen Elizabeth-class battleship. However, the armor-piercing ability of the 50 times the caliber main gun is already very strong, and it is not impossible to penetrate the 330mm thick armor with the capped armor-piercing projectile. Boom. 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 The artillery on the battlefield was rumbling, and the 6 battlecruisers of the German Navy were all firing continuously. The 3 battleships of the British Navy are also launching counterattacks. The 2 sides came and went, and the shells kept hitting the sea, splashing water jets soaring into the sky. Another battlefield is the battlefield of the German Navy's 1st Battlecruiser Squadron and the British Navy's Battlecruiser Squadron. Although there are only 4 battlecruisers left, the British Navy's battlecruiser detachment is still continuing. The belief of Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty and those Royal Navy soldiers is that the 2nd Battleship Squadron can arrive in time to turn the tide of battle. General, the New Zealand was hit again. The hull was severely damaged, and it was about to fail. A staff officer reported to Lieutenant General David Beatty. "I see, let them insist a little longer," Lieutenant General David Beatty said with a dark face. "Damn it, why hasn't the 2nd Battleship Squadron come?" Lieutenant General David Beatty was a little anxious. The current situation is very unfavorable to them. If this continues, they will definitely lose more warships. At that time, it will be even more difficult to reverse the situation. General Benjamin sent a telegram. "We encountered 6 German battlecruisers. Now, the 2 sides have already broken out into a war, and we are unable to reinforce us." A communications officer reported to Lieutenant General David Beatty with a look of panic. "What? Encountered 6 German battlecruisers? How is that possible?" Lieutenant General David Beatty's expression changed drastically. Such a result undoubtedly dealt him a heavy blow. After the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships were dragged, this would put them in an extremely disadvantageous situation, and they would even be completely sunk by the German Navy. In addition, the situation of the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships may not be very good. Although the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship is their most powerful battleship, it is still very difficult to say whether they will win or lose against an enemy twice as large as themselves. In particular, there are Derfliner-class battlecruisers among them. Lieutenant General David Beatty knows which battlecruiser is the most powerful. At the same time, Lieutenant General David Beatty also knew that if the 2nd Battleship Squadron hadn't encountered 6 other battlecruisers of the German Navy, then they might have faced the siege of 12 German battlecruisers. At that time, their fate can be imagined. Damn the Germans, they are too vicious. Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't help cursing. The current situation is obviously more unfavorable to them. Boom. Boom. Suddenly, a violent explosion sounded. I saw that the battlecruiser New Zealand was directly broken into 2 pieces in the violent explosion. The battlecruiser soon sank into the sea afterwards. Chapter 433, Jellicoe's Choice. The British Royal Navy's battlecruiser detachment and the 2nd Battleship Detachment are now in crisis. After the battlecruiser detachment lost the 3 battlecruisers Invincible, Indomitable and New Zealand, only the Tiger, Queen Mary and Royal Princess were left to suffer. It's hard to support. And they faced 6 battlecruisers of the German Navy. Although in the previous battles, the 6 battlecruisers of the German Navy were also hit. However, because of the strong defense and the poor performance of the artillery shells fired by the Royal Navy's warships, they did not cause fatal damage to the German Navy's battlecruisers. Even these battlecruisers still maintain intact combat effectiveness. This also put the Royal Navy's battlecruiser unit in a completely suppressed state. On the other side, the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battlecruisers of the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron of the British Navy are also under siege by the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron of the German Navy. With the assistance of the 3 Molt-class battlecruisers, the 3 Derfliner-class battlecruisers, which were not inferior to the Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, completely gained the upper hand. This made this naval battle very unfavorable to the British Navy. If no miracle happened, the fate of the British Navy's battlecruiser detachment and the 2nd Battleship Detachment could almost be expected. The British Navy has already lagged behind the German Navy in terms of capital ships. The loss of battlecruiser squadron and second battleship squadron would cost them another 9 capital ships. Then, it is even more impossible for their remaining warships to defeat the German Navy. It would be an extravagant hope to even fight the German Navy for a lose-lose situation. How did this battle end like this? Lieutenant General David Beatty was about to collapse. The battlecruiser detachment he led now only had 3 battlecruisers struggling to support it. However, under the siege of the German Navy, it seemed that it was not difficult for the 3 battlecruisers to be sunk. A result was definitely not what he expected, and it was something he hadn't expected at all. General, the second battleship squadron has been entangled by the Germans, and even its own safety cannot be guaranteed. What should we do next? Asked a general. Obviously, they have reached the most critical moment now. If they fail, they will all be wiped out. David? Lieutenant General Beatty, there is no good way at the moment. It can be said that when the German Navy's second battlecruiser unit appeared, it meant that their plan had completely failed. Those previous plans are useless. Report the situation here to General Jellicoe and tell him that we are waiting for his order. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Under such circumstances, he can only kick the ball to General John Jellicoe. After all, Admiral John Jellicoe was the commander of the Grand Fleet of the British Navy. At the most critical moment, he should make the final decision. In the sea area about 50 kilometers away from the battlefield, a huge fleet is sailing south at a speed of 12 knots. This fleet is very huge. There are hundreds of warships, large and small, guarded by a large number of small and medium-sized warships in the center. There are huge battleships one after another. Among them, the most eye-catching ones are undoubtedly the Revenge-class battleships with a displacement of more than 30,000 tons. On the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the Grand Fleet, Admiral John Jellicoe is drinking espresso. Coffee without sugar tastes very bitter. However, it can cheer people up. After not sleeping at all last night, Admiral John Jellicoe was very tired. This made him only able to refresh himself in this way. Your Excellency, the 5th Battleship Squadron has joined us. A general reported to Admiral John Jellicoe. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. The 3 Bellerophon-class battleships and 3 Street Vincent-class battleships of the 5th Battleship Squadron were the first batch of dreadnoughts built by the British Navy. Although there are many flaws, the power of the 305mm main gun is not strong either. However, the number of as many as 6 ships is undoubtedly a great force for the Royal Navy, which is seriously short of capital ships. David? General Beatty, there is any news? John. General Jellicoe asked. There is no news yet. The general replied. John. Admiral Jellicoe suddenly fell silent. He was particularly concerned about the battlecruiser detachment and the second battleship detachment led by Lieutenant General David Beatty. If Lieutenant General David Beatty can win the naval battle, it will be very beneficial to them. Even, it may give them the opportunity to achieve predetermined strategic goals. However, General John Jellicoe also knew that it would be very difficult to win because their enemies are too powerful. Numerous previous battles have proved that the German Navy is very powerful. Every time they thought they were sure of victory, they would lose very ugly in the end. 10 minutes later, a communications officer ran up anxiously. General, an urgent call from General Beatty. The officer reported. General John Jellicoe immediately took the telegram and read it quickly. However, before the telegram was read, his face was already very ugly. Damn, how could this be? Admiral John Jellicoe couldn't help cursing. The carefully prepared plan failed again. The battlecruiser detachment has already lost 3 battlecruisers. Although they are the 3 weakest battlecruisers, such a loss also makes them very painful. Not to mention, the second battleship squadron was also caught in the siege of the German Navy. It is foreseeable that their losses will continue to increase. There is no doubt that in the case of the battlecruiser detachment and the second battleship detachment suffered disastrous defeats, the Royal Navy has already lost this naval battle. Even though Admiral John Jellicoe still has 20 battleships in his hands, he has no confidence in winning at all. The best way is undoubtedly to immediately order the fleet to retreat and flee back to Scapa Flow. In this case, it may be possible to keep the main force of the Royal Navy and leave a little hope for future battles. However, John Jellicoe also knew that the order to retreat could not be issued. That is not in line with their strategic purpose. Chapter 434, Hard Fight. The battlecruiser detachment and the second battleship detachment will definitely suffer heavy losses this time. If all the main battleships are invested in a decisive battle with the Germans at this time, I'm afraid there will be no chance of winning. However, His Excellency Churchill's order is to let we are very likely to sink the capital ship of the German Navy and create opportunities for subsequent naval battles. If we retreat now, it is tantamount to giving up the command of the sea to the Germans. In addition, if we continue to retreat to Scapa Flow to avoid the war, the German Navy will definitely continue to attack our coastal cities. At that time, the pressure from the Navy and the cabinet will be very high. I'm afraid we still have to go to sea and fight the Germans. Admiral John Jellicoe thought secretly. Admiral John Jellicoe carefully considered how to act next in order to be the most beneficial to the Royal Navy. However, no matter how you act, it is almost impossible for the Royal Navy to reverse the situation. Such a result made John Jellicoe very frustrated. This time, is the Royal Navy finally going to lose? Is the British Empire's maritime supremacy for hundreds of years inevitably falling into the hands of the Germans? Admiral John Jellicoe felt sad and couldn't accept it. Such a result. But, that's what it is, General. The current situation is very unfavorable to us. General David Beattie's battlecruiser detachment and the second battleship detachment are already in danger. We must act immediately to reinforce them. Otherwise, they were all eaten by the Germans. At that time, we will not have enough strength to fight the Germans. A general suggested. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. Order the fleet to head south at full speed. Since the decisive battle between us and the Germans is inevitable, then, let the decisive battle begin today. Before the main force of the Germans arrives, strive to first severely damage the German battlecruiser formation. In this case, the decisive battle will be more beneficial to us. Yes, General, tell all the Royal Navy officers and soldiers that this battle is related to the life and death of the British Empire. We must fight the Germans with bravery and fearlessness like our ancestors did in the Battle of Trafalgar. God will bless the British Empire, defeat the despicable Germans. All will become the influence of the British Empire. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered. When the situation was very unfavorable to them, he could only find a way to improve the morale of the troops. In this case, a miracle may happen. This is the only way for Admiral John Jellicoe. Under the command of Admiral John Jellicoe, the main force of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet began to go south, preparing for a decisive battle with the German Navy. Moreover, they hope to severely damage or even wipe out the battlecruiser formation of the German Navy before the main force of the German Navy appears, so as to gain a favorable situation. At this moment, on the battlefield, the German Navy's 1st and 2nd battlecruiser squadrons are still ravaging the British Navy's battlecruiser squadron and 2nd battlecruiser squadron. The 2-on-1 advantage allowed them to firmly occupy the initiative on the battlefield and continued to cause damage to the British Navy. Boom. A 343mm shell hit the battleship Malayan. The shell hit the stern of the battleship Malayan, penetrated the armor of the stern deck, and exploded inside the battleship, igniting a raging fire. Immediately afterwards, a 343mm artillery shell fired from the battlecruiser Goeben directly hit the No. 2 main turret of the battleship Barham. Although, the main turret armor is as thick as 330mm. However, there is still no combination that can withstand the 50 times the caliber main gun and the capped armor-piercing projectile. After the shell tore through the armor, it exploded inside the turret. The huge power directly knocked the entire turret away. If the shells in the barrel had not been fired and there were no shells and guns inside, it would undoubtedly cause them greater losses. But this result has already surprised Rear Admiral Benjamin, commander of the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron. Damn, how could this be? Why, the German Molt-class battlecruiser can also directly penetrate our turret armor. This is not scientific at all. Major General Benjamin looked shocked. Undoubtedly, such a result completely made him unbelievable. General, the artillery technology of the Germans seems to be much ahead of ours. An officer exclaimed. Major General Benjamin was taken aback for a moment, but then he had to nod in agreement. Judging from the current situation, this is the only explanation. However, such a result undoubtedly made them feel better. As the General of the Royal Navy, Rear Admiral Benjamin is undoubtedly proud. But now, the Germans have used their strength to tear their pride into pieces, fight back, and move closer to the direction of the main fleet. Rear Admiral Benjamin ordered. In a critical situation, we can only move closer to the main force, and rely on the strength of the main force to survive the crisis. Boom. The British Navy also scored a hit, or 381mm artillery shell, which hit the battlecruiser Hindenburg. However, to the dismay of the British Navy, this hit only caused some insignificant minor injuries to the Hindenburg. There is no doubt that the advantage on the battlefield is still under the control of the German Navy. 2 minutes later, the battleship HMS Barham of the British Navy was hit again. This time, it was the battlecruiser Lutzow that hit him, or 380mm artillery shell penetrated the armor of the conning tower of the battleship Barham. The conning tower armor, which is only 280mm thick, was easily torn apart in front of the 380mm shells, as if it was paper. The shell exploded in the command tower, killing more than a dozen officers including the captain, which also plunged the battleship Barham into chaos. Immediately afterwards, the battlecruiser Goeben hit the battleship Barham again, and two 343mm shells hit the Barham, causing the battleship Barham to be further hurt. As time went on, the warships of the German Navy scored hits again and again. Shells continued to hit 3 battleships of the British Navy, leaving wounds on these battleships. On the other side, the battlecruiser detachment led by Lieutenant General David Beatty was also struggling to support under the siege of the 1st Battlecruiser Detachment of the German Navy. Chapter 435, Shares Confidence. On the battleship Bavaria, the flagship of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet, the commander of the High Seas Fleet, Admiral Reinhard Scheer, is listening to his adjutant's report on the battle situation. General, the 1st Battlecruiser Detachment has already sunk 3 battlecruisers of the British Navy, namely HMS Invincible, and HMS New Zealand. Currently, they are conducting operations against the remaining British Navy's battlecruisers. 3 battlecruisers launched a siege. Although the British Navy is struggling to support it, judging from the current situation, they simply cannot last much longer, said the adjutant. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded, and a smile appeared on his face. For the German Navy, the current situation is undoubtedly developing in their favor. Every time a capital ship of the British Navy is sunk, it means that they are one step closer to victory. If this continues, it won't be long before they will be able to win the final victory. Where is the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron? Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked. General, the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron is currently besieging 3 of the British Navy's Queen Elizabeth-class battleships. They encountered the British Navy's force in the sea south of the 1st Battlecruiser Squadron. Therefore, we judge that the British Navy this unit originally planned to attack our 1st Battlecruiser Squadron. However, after being bumped into by the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron, the plan failed, and they were also besieged by the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron. At present, although the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron has not been able to sink any capital ship of the British Navy, they have already firmly gained the upper hand. Perhaps, it will not be long before there will be good news, said the adjutant. Very good, very good. It seems that the Imperial Navy has completely took the initiative in this battle. If the remaining 3 British battlecruisers and 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships can be killed in one fell swoop, then the Imperial Navy will have a greater chance of winning in this battle. Admiral Reinhard Scheer became more and more confident in winning. By the way, is there any news about the British main fleet? Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked. The main fleet of the British Navy still has more than 20 battleships. Those capital ships also pose a certain threat to the German Navy. If you want to defeat the British Navy, you will inevitably have to fight the main force of the Royal Navy. General, there is no news about the main fleet of the British Navy yet. However, their battlecruiser formation and 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships are in crisis. Then their main fleet will definitely not be left to die, said the adjutant. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded. The analysis is very reasonable. Indeed, if the British main fleet does not act, they will have to watch us kill their remaining battlecruisers and 3 ships. The Queen Elizabeth-class battleships are definitely a serious blow to the British. After losing these battleships, they will no longer be able to reverse the situation. Command the fleet to speed up and move closer to the 1st Battlecruiser Squadron. If the main fleet of the British appears, then this means that our decisive battle with them has begun. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, General. The adjutant immediately went to give the order. By the way, where is our aircraft carrier formation? Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked. The two existing aircraft carriers of the German Navy also went to battle this time. It's just that the German Navy has always kept this new type of warship and tactics strictly secret, and only a very small number of generals know the existence of the aircraft carrier. Admiral Reinhard Scheer had personally seen the aircraft carrier's maneuvers, so he believed in the combat effectiveness of the aircraft carrier. Although, the German Navy now has only 2 aircraft carriers, and the carrier-based aircraft carried by the aircraft carriers can only carry light aviation torpedoes. Light aviation torpedoes may not pose much threat to heavily armored battleships. However, for small and medium warships, it can cause fatal damage. What's more, many of the British Navy's warships are weakly armored. The armor of some previously built battleships may not be able to withstand light aviation torpedoes. This makes Reinhard Scheer full of expectations for the performance of the 2 aircraft carriers. General, the aircraft carrier formation has been in the sea to the east of us, about 100 kilometers away from us. A staff officer reported. Tell the aircraft carrier formation that once they find the main fleet of the British, they will launch an attack immediately. They will cause casualties to the British as much as possible. This way, it will be more conducive to our decisive battle with the British, said Reinhard Scheer will order. According to Admiral Reinhard Scheer, as long as the carrier-based aircraft carried by the aircraft carrier can cause damage to the dreadnought ships in the main fleet of the British Navy, it is enough. As for the remaining capital ships, such as the Revenge-class battleships, they can be handed over to the main fleet of the Imperial Navy, such as the Bavaria-class battleships that have just entered service. As the most powerful battleships of the German Navy, this is their first time on the battlefield, so naturally they have to perform well. In addition, the King-class battleships are also equipped with 380mm main guns, and their overall strength is also far superior to the Revenge-class battleships of the British Navy. It can be said that judging from the current strength of both sides, the German Navy has firmly gained the upper hand. In the next naval battle, it seemed very easy to defeat the British Navy in one fell swoop and win the naval battle. Yes, General. Come on, British. In this battle, the Imperial Navy will completely knock you down from the altar. Admiral Reinhard Scheer is full of confidence in the next battle. He also believed that the Imperial Navy would not let him down. As the German Navy sank more and more of the capital ships of the British Navy, the German Navy's hope of victory grew. The main fleet of the German Navy began to accelerate to the battlefield. Although they are a little farther away from the battlefield. On the frontline battlefield, the German Navy's 1st and the 2nd battle cruiser squadrons still firmly controlled the initiative on the battlefield. The British Navy's battle cruiser squadron and 2nd battleship squadron suffered increasing losses under their siege. Chapter 436, Tragic. General, Your Excellency Commander, let us move closer to the main fleet. They will arrive at the battlefield in an hour. A communications officer on the battleship Queen Elizabeth, the flagship of the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron, reported to Rear Admiral Benjamin. An hour. Got. After an hour, we have been sunk by the Germans. Major General Benjamin exclaimed. The current situation is very unfavorable to them. The 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships have been injured in many places. Even the flagship HMS Queen Elizabeth was hit many times. One of the 4 main turrets has been reimbursed, and only 1/3 of the firepower is left. In addition, there are big holes everywhere in the garrison and the stern. It can be seen how fierce the previous battle was. The most severely damaged ship was undoubtedly the 2nd ship Barham. With the death of the captain and others, the navigator is now in command of the battleship. However, due to the serious damage to the hull, the combat effectiveness of the battleship has dropped a lot. The battleship Malaya is also struggling to support. Rear Admiral Benjamin did not pay attention to the Moltke-class battlecruisers of the German Navy before, so that the 3 Moltke-class battlecruisers could fire without any interference. This directly led to the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships of the British Navy being hit by them many times. The performance of these 3 Molt-class battle cruisers was even better than the performance of the 3 Derfliner-class battle cruisers. Under such a huge loss, Major General Benjamin is determined to persevere, but he really has no idea whether he can persist for an hour. It's not that he doesn't work hard, and it's not that the soldiers don't work hard. It's just that the strength gap between the two sides is too great. Similarly, the remaining 3 battle cruisers of the battle cruiser detachment led by Lieutenant General David Beatty are also struggling to support. Moreover, their situation is more difficult than that of the British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron. Among other things, the defense of these 3 battle cruisers is far inferior to the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, which made them suffer a lot. General, Your Excellency Commander has arrived with the main fleet. When they arrive, we will have hope, an officer said. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty remained expressionless. He knew very well that the best strategy was that Admiral John Jellicoe immediately led the main fleet to retreat. In this case, the main force can be preserved. As long as the main fleet exists, even if it is trapped in Scapa Flow, it is a great threat to the German Navy. If the main fleet goes out to battle, it will be wiped out by the German Navy. Then, the Royal Navy is completely finished. Britain will also lose this war completely, and it will be defeated. Of course, Lieutenant General David Beatty also knew that there was no way for General John Jellicoe to do so. On the one hand, Churchill's order made him only able to lead the main force of the fleet to fight the German Navy desperately, hoping to sink as many warships of the German Navy as possible and prepare for dozens of former dreadnoughts to return to the battlefield. On the other hand, if the Royal Navy avoids a decisive battle with the German Navy will definitely repeat its tricks and launch attacks on British coastal cities. At that time, it will inevitably cause huge losses to Britain. As a last resort, Admiral John Jellicoe could only implement Churchill's order and fought a decisive battle with the German. Hopefully, we can fight the Germans in this battle and lose both sides. In that case, we still have a slight chance. It won't be like what it is now. There is no chance at all. Lieutenant General David Beatty murmured said. Indeed, now Lieutenant General David Beatty has set his goal to be able to fight with the German Navy and lose both sides. As for winning, he knew that it was simply impossible. That is simply an unrealistic luxury. Boom. Boom. The violent explosion made Lieutenant General David Beatty's face even more ugly. I saw that the superstructure of the Queen Mary was on fire. During the shelling just now, the battlecruiser Prince Friedrich of the German Navy scored a hit, and 2 380mm shells hit the battlecruiser. A shell hit the defense of the battlecruiser Queen Mary, and the fragile armor of the battlecruiser Queen Mary, in front of the 380mm main gun, was no different from paper, and was easily torn open. The entire bow of the ship was blown off in a violent explosion, just like a piece was chewed off by a monster. Seawater has begun to pour into the hull of the battlecruiser Queen Mary. Another the shell exploded on the superstructure of the battlecruiser Queen Mary, which not only ignited a raging fire, but also knocked down a chimney, causing the speed of the battlecruiser Queen Mary to begin to drop. In such a fierce naval battle, once the speed drops, everyone knows what it means. General, the Queen Mary has been hit, and they request to withdraw from the battle. A communications officer reported. No. Tell them, as long as they are not sunk, even if only one main gun can fire, they must continue to fight. Lieutenant General David Beatty ordered with a dark face. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately forwarded the order. The battlecruiser Queen Mary has no choice but to hold on to the bomb. As the bow continued to enter the water, the draft of the battleship became deeper and deeper. At the same time, the speed of the battleship is also further decreasing. In the ensuing battle, in just 5 minutes, the battlecruiser Queen Mary was hit many times, with 3 380mm shells and 7 243mm shells hitting him. After eating so many shells, the battlecruiser Queen Mary has become riddled with holes and holes everywhere. Seawater frantically poured into the hull of the Queen Mary from these holes, causing the battlecruiser to quickly sink into the sea. None of the more than 1,000 naval officers and soldiers on the battleship survived. Upon hearing the news of the sinking of the Queen Mary, Lieutenant General David Beatty closed his eyes in pain. He knew that it was all because of his order that the Queen Mary was sunk. However, he thought that soon he would be able to atone for his order. because the remaining 2 battle cruisers will certainly not last long under the siege of the 6 battle cruisers of the German Navy. Soon, they will follow in the footsteps of the battle cruiser Queen Mary. Chapter 437. The main force appeared. British Navy's 2nd Battleship Squadron. Rear Admiral Benjamin is watching the sinking of the battleship Barham in a daze. It is not easy for this battleship to persist until now. During the battle just now, the battleship Barham was hit again. A 380mm artillery shell and a 343mm artillery shell hit the Barham at the same time. A shell hit the stern of the ship, blowing up the steering gear of the battleship Barham, and causing the battleship to be seriously flooded. Another shell tore through the underwater armor of the battleship Barham. Although, the underwater armor with a thickness of 330mm is very strong. However, the 380mm shell still tore it apart directly. After the shell exploded, a big hole was blown directly below the waterline of the battleship Barham. Seawater poured into the battleship Barham frantically, and the damage control personnel didn't even have a chance to plug the loophole. Even when they tried to close the watertight door, they failed. In the end, the battleship Barham capsized on the sea due to excessive water intake. Then, the entire hull quickly sank into the sea. Damn it, the Barham was sunk. Which one is it going to be next? Is it the Malayan, or our flagship Queen Elizabeth? Rear Admiral Benjamin thought secretly. For victory, he has almost completely lost confidence. At this time, the main fleet of the British Navy is heading south quickly. Hundreds of warships are laid out on the sea, looking mighty and majestic. However, on the battleship Revenge, Admiral John Jellicoe, commander of the British Navy's Grand Fleet, kept frowning. General Betty reports that the Queen Mary has been sunk. A communications officer reported. I see. Admiral John Jellicoe replied blankly. In the entire command tower, the atmosphere was about to freeze. Once again the Royal Navy lost a battle cruiser, which left them with just 2. Lieutenant General David Beatty only relied on the remaining 2 battle cruisers, and it was undoubtedly very difficult to resist the siege of the 6 German battle cruisers. Maybe, soon they will hear bad news again. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the communications officer went on to report the military situation to General John Jellicoe. General Benjamin reports that the battleship Barham was sunk. Admiral John Jellicoe's face at this moment is so gloomy that it seems that water can drip out. Once again, they lost a battle cruiser and a battleship, making them lose a full 5 capital ships before confronting the main force of the German Navy. This is already a very powerful force for the Royal Navy. The officers in the command tower are even more afraid to vent their anger now, for fear of offending Admiral John Jellicoe. How long will it take us to get to the battlefield? Admiral John Jellicoe asked. General, according to the current speed, we will arrive at the battlefield in about half an hour, a staff officer reported. Half an hour. Order the ships, and prepare for battle. After arriving on the battlefield, launch an attack immediately. This time, we must make the Germans pay for their blood. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered. The heavy loss made him almost fall into madness. The only thing he thought about was to sink the warships of the German Navy and avenge those warships that were sunk. However, General Jellicoe also know that it is very difficult. On the battlefield, the fierce battle is still going on. The 6 battleships of the German Navy's 1st battle cruiser squadron besieged the remaining 2 battle cruisers of the British Navy's battle cruiser squadron. Shells continued to fall around the battle cruiser Tiger and the battle cruiser Royal Princess, splashing jets of water into the sky. The water splashed down, even soaking the deck of the battleship. The British sailors on the battleship were even more nervous. Many people even turned pale with fright. There is no doubt that they have a very good understanding of the current situation. I also know that if the battle goes wrong and they don't pay attention, they may follow in the footsteps of those sunk warships. Boom. Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering explosion. I saw the battle cruiser Royal Princess completely shrouded in flames and gunpowder smoke. What's going on, David? Betty Lieutenant General asked. General, the main turret of the Royal Princess was hit. It seems that the ammunition depot was detonated. An officer reported with a pale face. Lieutenant General David Betty closed his eyes in pain. After suffering such a blow, it didn't take much thinking to know that the battlecruiser Royal Princess was hopeless. Indeed, the battlecruiser Royal Princess, whose bow was almost blown to pieces, sank into the sea in less than 2 minutes. This left the British Navy's battlecruiser unit with only one battlecruiser left. Moreover, it was still under the siege of the battlecruiser detachment of the German Navy. How long they can persist depends on God's will. Good job. Besiege the remaining British battlecruiser Tiger and sink all their battlecruisers. Lieutenant General Hipper excitedly ordered. If all the battlecruisers of the British Navy can be destroyed, this is also a huge victory. It's just that Lieutenant General Hipper's goal has not been achieved. Because, just as the battlecruiser Tiger was under siege and was at stake, the main fleet of the British Navy arrived. Fire. Following Admiral John Jellicoe's order, the 6 Revenge-class battleships immediately launched shelling. Boom. 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 A series of 381mm artillery shells, accompanied by a roaring roar, slammed into the battleships of the German Navy's 1st battlecruiser squadron under the angry eyes of the British naval officers and soldiers. Lieutenant General Hipper hesitated a little, but gave the order to retreat. After all, preserving one's own strength is the most important thing. He didn't want to take his battleship into it, just to sink the battlecruiser Tiger. In that case, it would be too uneconomical. Inform Your Excellency the Commander in the 2nd Battlecruiser Squadron that the main force of the British has appeared, especially General Spee. Let them seize the opportunity to kill the British Queen Elizabeth-class battleship. Hipper the Lieutenant General ordered. Chapter 438 Aircraft Carrier Attack. The British main fleet came at too bad a time. Even if they came half an hour later, we could have sunk the battlecruiser Tiger. On the battlecruiser Mackensen, Lieutenant General Hipper's tone was full of regret. Of course, it can also be understood that he is simply trying to get cheap and act good. Up to now, the 6 battlecruisers of his 1st battlecruiser squadron have suffered more or less injuries, but they were all minor injuries and did not have any impact on their combat effectiveness. On the other hand, the battlecruiser unit of the British Navy suffered heavy losses. Except for the battlecruiser Tiger, all others were sunk. Even the battlecruiser Tiger suffered several shells. 2 of the 4 twin 343mm main guns were knocked out, leaving only half of their firepower. Report to the flagship immediately, and then start retreating. Lieutenant General Hipper ordered. Although the 6 battlecruisers of the 1st battlecruiser detachment are powerful, but Lieutenant General Hipper was not stupid enough to use 6 battlecruisers to challenge the more than 20 battleships of the British Navy. What's more, there are 6 Revenge-class battleships among them. The Vengeance class the battleship is also equipped with a 381mm main gun, and sacrifices a little speed to improve its armor. Compared with the Queen Elizabeth class battleship, its combat effectiveness is stronger. Even if the Mackensen class battlecruiser is more powerful than it will not take much advantage. Lieutenant General Hipper is a smart man, so naturally he would not do such a stupid thing. The 1st battlecruiser squadron of the German Navy began to retreat. Once the battlecruisers start to accelerate, the main fleet of the British Navy simply cannot catch up. As the main battleships of the Royal Navy, most of them have a speed of only 20 or 21 knots. How can they catch up with those battlecruisers? The rest of the cruisers and destroyers were able to catch up. However, are those small and medium-sized warships catching up? Are they going to die? Under such circumstances, the British Royal Navy's main fleet could only watch helplessly as the German Navy's 1st battleship squadron swaggered away. There was nothing they could do about it. Immediately, Lieutenant General David Beatty went to the battleship Revenge in a transportation boat with a livid face. "I'm sorry, Commander, I lost." Lieutenant General David Beatty looked ashamed. In this war, he has been defeated by the Germans for the 3rd time. This made him, who was proud, feel very guilty. "Hey, General Beatty, it's not because of you, but because the Germans are too strong. I now doubt whether we are right or wrong to fight the decisive battle with the Germans. But now, we have no other choice. I can only do my best to fight this battle. I hope God can bless us and win." Admiral John Jellicoe sighed. Lieutenant General David Beatty nodded. "General, what should we do now? The battlecruiser detachment is completely wiped out. The battlecruiser Tiger was severely damaged, and it was impossible to continue fighting. I have to go back to the shipyard for repairs. Otherwise, I'm afraid there is a danger of sinking. The situation of the second battleship squadron is also very pessimistic. The Barham has been sunk, and the remaining Queen Elizabeth and the Malayan are also in danger under the siege of the Germans. Let the Tiger retreat to Scapa Flow. The fleet continues to go south, ready to meet the second battleship squadron, and let General Benjamin hold on. I think the German main fleet should know that we have arrived. Therefore, let us be ready for a decisive battle with them. God bless the British Empire. Even if the Germans cannot be defeated in this battle, at least they will have to pay a high enough price. Admiral John Jellicoe said, "It's the only way now." Lieutenant General David Beatty looked frustrated. However, the main fleet of the British Navy still failed to successfully meet the second battleship squadron. When they arrived, the second battlecruiser squadron of the German Navy had just left. At the last moment, they sank the battleship Malayan and severely damaged the battleship Queen Elizabeth. Although, Lieutenant General Spee regretted not being able to sink the battleship Queen Elizabeth. However, he also didn't want to have a fierce battle with the main force of the British Navy in order to sink the Queen Elizabeth battleship. What's more, the battleship Queen Elizabeth was also severely damaged, at least in this battle. It was unable to play any role. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty looked at the battleship Queen Elizabeth like a girl who had been ravaged by a villain. There is no doubt that in this decisive battle at sea, the British Navy fought very badly in the early days. So far, they have sunk 5 battlecruisers and 2 battleships, and lost 1 battlecruiser and 1 battleship. This is almost equivalent to losing 1/3 of the combat power. But their enemy, the German Navy, suffered no losses. This also made the disadvantages of the British Navy in this battle more obvious. The first and second battlecruiser squadrons of the German Navy have joined together. The 12 battlecruisers are undoubtedly a very powerful force. However, they did not immediately rush to a decisive battle with the British Navy's main fleet, but were waiting for the arrival of their own main fleet. When the 24 battleships of the German Navy arrive, it will be a good opportunity to have a decisive battle with the British Navy and eat them in one bite. However, at this time, Admiral Reinhard Scheer, who had not rushed to the battlefield, had already given the order to attack. It was not the battleship force or battlecruiser force of the German Navy that carried out the attack, but the aircraft carrier formation hundreds of kilometers away from the battlefield. In the waters 100 kilometers east of the battlefield, 2 aircraft carriers of the German Navy are sailing at a speed of 10 knots. On the deck, fighter planes have completed their preparations for takeoff. Marshal Prince Heinrich, commander of the German Navy aircraft carrier formation, is on the bridge, looking at the planes with satisfaction. "Your Excellency Marshal, Your Excellency Commander ordered us to attack," an officer reported. "Then order the carrier-based aircraft to take off. Tell our pilots that this is our first time participating in actual combat. Let them all perform well and show the prestige of an aircraft carrier force," Marshal Prince Heinrich ordered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, Target of the Royal Navy. Prince Heinrich, the third child of Frederick III and younger brother of William II. Before that, he served in the German Navy, served as commander of the High Seas Fleet and Attorney General of the Navy. When Prince Heinrich was about to retire, Qin Tian approached him and hoped that he would be the commander of the aircraft carrier fleet. Although Prince Heinrich has never seen the new weapon of the aircraft carrier, he is also very interested. In particular, Qin Tian described to him that the future aircraft carrier will become the absolute main force of the Navy, which made Prince Heinrich fascinated. Because of this, Prince Heinrich accepted Qin Tian's invitation and became the first commander of the German Navy's aircraft carrier fleet. It can be said that the aircraft carrier fleet can quickly form combat effectiveness, and Prince Heinrich has made a lot of efforts. Now is the time to see the rewards. Admiral Reinhard Scheer's order took less than 20 minutes, and the first carrier-based aircraft took off from the aircraft carrier Pioneer. Immediately afterwards, the Victory aircraft carrier also began to take off carrier-based aircraft. The fighters that take off first are all light fighters. The torpedo attack aircraft are heavier and need a longer runway, so they take off last. Now, the two aircraft carriers of the German Navy only carry two types of carrier-based aircraft, fighter jets and torpedo attack aircraft. As for Qin Tian's preferred dive bomber, it has not been successfully developed due to technical constraints. If ordinary bombers are used for horizontal bombing, it is undoubtedly very difficult to hit a high-speed moving target on the sea. In contrast, torpedo aircraft are undoubtedly a greater threat to surface warships. Even light aviation torpedoes can pose a deadly threat to small and medium-sized warships. Even if the armor of the battleship is a little weaker, it may not be able to withstand it. Watching one after another carrier-based aircraft soaring from the deck, circling over the aircraft carrier, waiting for other fighters to form a formation, Prince Heinrich was very excited. I thought that I would never have the opportunity to participate in the decisive battle with the British Navy, but I didn't expect that I would be able to participate in it again in this way. Thank you, Your Royal Highness, for allowing me to fulfill my wish. May God bless you. The aircraft carrier fleet of the Imperial Navy can win the battle, Prince Heinrich said secretly. As an admiral, and also served as the commander of the High Seas Fleet, how could he not want to participate in the decisive battle with the Royal Navy? Especially when the German Navy has already taken advantage. It is undoubtedly more hopeful that it can leave its name in this war. Because of the range of the current fighter jets, half of the fighter jets that took off first from the aircraft carrier Pioneer and the Victory aircraft carrier flew westward after finishing their formation. After the remaining fighters take off, they will be regrouped. The aircraft carrier Pioneer and the aircraft carrier Victory can only carry 48 carrier-based aircraft. This is mainly due to the high winds and rough waves in the Atlantic Ocean, which is not as calm as the Pacific Ocean, so the aircraft carrier must consider the sea conditions here. Naturally, it is impossible to carry a large number of carrier-based aircraft on each aircraft carrier like the United States and Japan in another time and space up. The first batch of carrier-based aircraft included 24 fighter jets and 24 torpedo attack aircraft. The second batch of 48 carrier-based aircraft are all torpedo attack aircraft. In the case that the British Navy does not have aviation, the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft force hardly has to compete with them for air supremacy. In addition, the warships of the British Navy did not have anti-aircraft weapons, which made it almost unnecessary for the carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy to be attacked. The only thing they have to do is find the British Navy and launch an attack. Of course, with the guidance of the German Navy's battle cruiser force, finding the main fleet of the British Navy is not a problem at all. This also made this attack completely easy. Time passed by 1 minute and 1 second, and the carrier-based aircraft that took off from the German Navy's aircraft carrier gradually approached the British Navy's main fleet. Originally, for these carrier-based aircraft, it only took half an hour to cover a distance of 100 kilometers. On the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the Grand Fleet of the Royal Navy, Admiral John Jellicoe and Vice Admiral David Beatty were quietly waiting for the decisive battle to come. They knew that the main fleet of the German Navy must be on its way, and would encounter them soon. As long as this decisive battle is over, no matter whether they win or lose, their mission will also be over. Your Excellency, the German battle cruisers hang us in front of us. It is estimated that their main fleet will appear soon. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. The decisive battle between us and the Germans is inevitable. Now, we still have 20 battleships, and the Germans still have 24 battleships and 12 battle cruisers 1.8 times. I only hope that we can kill more than 20 German capital ships in this battle. In this way, our crisis can be resolved. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Sinking 20 capital ships of the German Navy is the goal of Admiral John Jellicoe. In that case, even they would be completely sunk. However, the strength of the German Navy, which still has more than a dozen capital ships, has been greatly weakened. It is impossible to block the United Kingdom again. In addition, the United States, which has been suppressed by the Germans, will inevitably take the opportunity to intervene. This will buy enough time for the United Kingdom, and after the construction of their follow-up capital ship is completed, they can fight the German Navy again. By that time, they may not necessarily fail again. Your Excellency, it is very difficult to sink more than 20 German capital ships. However, even if we can sink 15 of them, that is a rare victory. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. The strength of the German Navy ranks first in the world. However, if the British Navy can cause them heavy losses, then other countries may no longer be afraid of the German Navy. At that time, the British Navy will naturally have a chance. John. Admiral Jellicoe nodded. Yes, even by sinking 15 of their capital ships, we have severely damaged the Germans. I know that it is very difficult to defeat the Germans. However, it should still be very possible to severely damage them. After all, we dare to fight them. John Jellicoe said. Chapter 440. First show of carrier-based aircraft. For all officers and men of the Royal Navy Grand Fleet, this battle is doomed to failure. However, for the sake of the British Empire, they had to do their best to fight the German Navy. Because, only in this way, can the British Empire have a chance of winning this war. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty even set their goal to sink 15 or 20 battleships of the German Navy. It can be seen that they are undoubtedly very familiar with this naval battle, knowing that if they want to win, it is almost impossible. Therefore, we can only settle for the next best thing, hoping to exchange our own sacrifices for the opportunity to severely damage the German Navy. If this goal can be successfully achieved, then Britain may still have a chance to win. Otherwise, Britain is doomed. In this war, the British Empire, which has dominated the world for hundreds of years, will completely collapse. The world colonial system they have painstakingly maintained will also collapse because of this. The German Reich would step on their corpses and rise as the new world hegemon. In this regard, every British person is naturally unwilling. Therefore, the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy will know that they are dead, and they will fight hard. The spirit of Nelson has always inspired them. Time passed little by little, and at around 10 AM, a group of small black spots appeared in the eastern sky. No one paid attention, and even if someone occasionally saw it, they thought it was just a migrating bird. However, soon these small black spots continued to grow larger. At the same time, there was a buzzing sound, as if a wild bee was flying. My god. What's that? A lookout used a telescope to see the planes approaching them. Damn it, the plane. That's a German plane, shouted an officer. Because the Iron Cross on the wing is so obvious. General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty also immediately learned of the news, and they all used binoculars to observe the approaching planes. The faces of the two of them became very ugly. Obviously, the appearance of the German aircraft also exceeded their expectations. As for how these planes will affect them, they still can't think of it. But there is no doubt that both of them have a bad feeling in their hearts. How could the German planes appear here? There is no airport near here. Admiral John Jellicoe frowned. Did the Germans develop an aircraft with an extremely long range? It can fly here from their homeland. Lieutenant General David Beatty also felt a little incredible. After all, Britain's own aircraft don't have a long range. Your Excellency, Commander, are the Germans planning to use these planes to attack us? An officer asked. Planes attack warships? How is that possible? Our warships are so huge and have thick armor. How could they be threatened by those toy-like planes? Lieutenant General David Beatty said disdainfully. Let the ships be carefully protected. It is impossible for the Germans to send these planes without any effect. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Yes, General. But, no matter how protected they are, what can they do to the planes in the sky? These warships of the British Navy are not equipped with anti-aircraft weapons. On the other side, the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy also spotted the plane in the sky, which caused some commotion among the officers and soldiers of the German Navy. However, after learning that those planes were all their own planes, they calmed down and began to happily prepare to watch the performance of their own planes. Your Excellency, Commander, is really cautious. You actually let the aircraft carrier force take the lead in attacking the British. However, if this happens, the British will be even more powerless. Lieutenant General Hipper couldn't help shaking his head. Obviously a little bit feels sorry for the British. As a senior general of the German Navy, Lieutenant General Hipper also has some understanding of the combat effectiveness of aircraft carriers. Obviously, he didn't think the British could withstand the attacks of these carrier-based aircraft. Lieutenant General Spedy stared closely at these carriers-based aircraft with binoculars. He wanted to see with his own eyes how powerful these carrier-based aircraft are in actual combat. After all, Qin Tian said that in the future, the combination of carrier-based aircraft and aircraft carrier will replace capital ships and become the master of future naval battles. As the senior generals of the German Navy, they were extremely convinced of Qin Tian. But at the same time, they also wanted to test it out with their own eyes. Initiate an attack. When the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft unit flew over the British Navy's main fleet, the commander immediately gave the order to attack. A signal flare was fired from the cockpit of a fighter jet. Because radio miniaturization is still a work in progress, there is no way to install radios in every aircraft. In order to direct the actions of the carrier-based aircraft, only the responsible commander can be equipped with a signal gun for commanding the fleet. After seeing the order, whether it was a fighter jet or a torpedo attack plane, they all started to attack. The fighter jets strafed the deck of the British battleship with aviation machine guns, causing damage to the personnel of the British Navy. The torpedo attack aircraft, on the other hand, dropped torpedoes directly at those battleships. Of course, in order to ensure greater damage to the battleships of the British Navy, the primary targets of the attack were set to be the Bellerophon-class battleships, the St. Vincent-class battleships and the Giant-class battleships. These third-tier battleships belong to the early battleships built by the British Navy, and their defense is relatively weak, and they are easy to be damaged or even sunk. When he saw the German planes began to lower their altitude and rushed towards them, Admiral John Jellicoe suddenly screamed inwardly, "Damn, these German planes are going to attack." However, they had no way to defend themselves. They could only watch those German planes start to attack. Da-da-da. A fighter jet began to fire, and the aviation machine gun on the nose fired dense bullets. The bullet hit the battleship, shoot out sparks one by one. What? There was a scream, and some unlucky guy was hit. The bullets of aviation machine guns are already powerful, and after being hit, they are often torn into pieces. The other British naval officers and soldiers who looked strange were also frightened, and hurriedly fled back to the cabin to hide. While these fighter jets were strafing, the torpedo attack aircraft also launched an attack. These planes, in a group of 4, directly attacked the British Navy's Bellerophon-class battleships and St. Vincent-class battleships. Chapter 441, Sinking. The Bellerophon-class battleship is the earliest mass-produced dreadnought ship for the British Navy. After the dreadnought battleship was launched into service, the construction of the Bellerophon-class battleship began. A total of 3 ships of the same class were built, pushed the Royal Navy into the era of dreadnoughts. However, as a standard dreadnought, the performance of the Bellerophon-class battleship is undoubtedly much worse than that of the later super dreadnoughts. The Bellerophon-class battleship has a displacement of less than 19,000 tons, and is equipped with 5 twin 305mm main guns. However, only 4 main guns can fire on the same side. In terms of armor, the thickness of the main armor belt is 254mm, and the armor of the turret and conning tower is 280mm. Such a defense is not considered weak among the warships of the British Navy. However, compared with the German Navy, it is undoubtedly much worse. The maximum speed is only 21 knots. After serving in service for several years, it is not bad to have a maximum speed of 18 or 9 knots. The carrier-based aircraft force of the German Navy took the Bellerophon-class battleship as their preferred target for attack. Compared with other battleships of the British Navy, this class of battleships is undoubtedly much weaker and more likely to be sunk. After all, the light aviation torpedoes carried by carrier-based aircraft are too weak. It will undoubtedly be a bit difficult to deal with those super dreadnought ships with thick armor. 4 torpedo attack planes pounced on the British Navy's battleship Bellerophon, which made the British sailors on the battleship look at each other, wondering what these German planes were going to do. By the time the 4 torpedo attack aircraft flew to a distance of only 1,000 meters from the battleship Bellerophon, their altitude had dropped to only 100 meters from the sea. A torpedo attack aircraft dropped a torpedo, which hit the sea heavily and sank directly. Then it floated up again and quickly rushed towards the battleship Bellerophon. The other 3 torpedo attack aircraft also dropped torpedoes at this distance. 4 torpedoes rushed towards the battleship Bellerophon in a fan shape. What is that? The British sailors on the Bellerophon saw the plane drop something onto the sea, but they didn't know what it was. Of course, when they saw the 4 torpedoes rushing towards them quickly, they immediately understood everything. Got torpedoes. Those planes can drop torpedoes. A British officer shouted in horror, frightened out of his wits. Quickly evade. There are 4 torpedoes on the port side. Evade immediately. The captain also immediately issued an order to evade. The battleship Bellerophon immediately began an emergency turn. However, it is not so easy to turn a huge warship with a displacement of nearly 19,000 tons and a length of more than 160 meters. After all, this is a battleship, not a boat. Under the horrified eyes of the officers and soldiers of the British Royal Navy on the battleship Bellerophon, the 4 torpedoes were getting closer and closer to them. Even if the battleship has started to turn now, it is almost impossible to avoid it. Boom. The first aviation torpedo hit the stern of the battleship Bellerophon, and the warhead exploded violently. The huge power immediately tore a big hole in the underwater armor of the battleship Bellerophon. Immediately afterwards, one of the other 3 torpedoes scored a hit again, tearing a hole amidships of the battleship Bellerophon. The other 2 torpedoes were missed. Being hit by 2 torpedoes, even light torpedoes, is enough for the battleship Bellerophon to drink a pot. Quickly, carry out damage control immediately, and we must plug the loophole. The captain roared loudly. In the case of 2 loopholes under the waterline of the battleship, if the loopholes are not blocked, the consequences can be imagined. At that time, the entire battleship will have to sink. At the same time, the Magnificent and Reckless, which are the same class of Bellerophon battleships, were also besieged by carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy. These 2 battleships were also hit by 1 torpedo and 2 torpedoes respectively. Moreover, this is only the first attack by the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft unit. 12 torpedo attack aircraft that had dropped torpedoes have begun to return. They need to return to the aircraft carrier to mount new torpedoes, and then rejoin the attack. The other 12 torpedo attack aircraft continue to attack the Bellerophon class battleship. In the previous combat plan, the task of the carrier-based aircraft force was to sink the British Navy's Bellerophon class battleships and St. Vincent class battleships, launch an attack on other battleships of the British Navy. Of course, for those battleships with relatively thick armor, it may be very difficult to sink them with light torpedoes. However, even if they can be injured, it will be very beneficial for the next main decisive battle. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty on the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the British Royal Navy's Grand Fleet, were beyond shocked. In the distance, the carrier-based planes of the German Navy are besieging 3 Bellerophon-class battleships, but they can't do anything. They can only watch from a distance. This is undoubtedly a heavy blow for them. Damn it, the German planes were able to drop torpedoes. How did they do it? How did they come up with such a tactic? Admiral John Jellicoe was about to go crazy. He has never heard of this new tactic adopted by the German Navy. The entire British Royal Navy was simply not prepared for this. Under such circumstances, it is completely at the mercy of the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft. It would be great if our battleships were equipped with anti-aircraft weapons. Lieutenant General David Beatty sighed. However, it is too late to say this now. They had never expected that the German Navy would adopt such tactics before, so naturally it was impossible to prepare in advance. During the subsequent attack, the battleship Bellerophon suffered 2 torpedoes again. This caused the battleship to start flooding continuously. Even with the efforts of damage control personnel, the loopholes could not be plugged. As a last resort, they had to close the watertight cabin. However, due to too much water, the warship could no longer maintain its balance, causing the warship to capsize on the sea. The battleship Bellerophon also became the first warship in history to be sunk by a carrier-based aircraft. Chapter 442, Panic. Your Excellency, the battleship Bellerophon is sinking, and General Davidson requests to abandon the ship. The communications officer reported to Admiral John Jellicoe. Admiral John Jellicoe's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Before that, he still dreamed of sinking about 20 capital ships of the German Navy in a decisive battle. However, before a decisive battle with the German Navy, they were besieged by the carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy and lost a capital ship again. What's more terrible is that the attack of those carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy has not ended yet. Who knows how many battleships they will lose in the next battle. They are allowed to abandon the ship, Admiral John Jellicoe said through gritted teeth. Since the battleship Bellerophon can no longer be rescued, it is destined to sink. Under such circumstances, Admiral John Jellicoe naturally could not refuse their request to abandon the ship. After all, he hopes that the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy will fight to the end, but this does not mean that he can deliberately murder them. In that case, even if the battle is over, he will be court-martialed. Unless, of course, he died in a naval battle. After receiving the order to abandon the ship, the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy on the battleship Bellerophon rushed for the opportunity to board the lifeboat. However, there are only so many lifeboats, and it is almost impossible to get everyone on the lifeboats. Therefore, of the more than 700 naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Bellerophon, only less than 200 escaped in the end, and the rest sank into the sea along with the battleship. Compared to the battleship Bellerophon, the Magnificent and the Reckless had better luck. Although they also suffered a few torpedoes, they were not fatal. However, it also suffered heavy damage due to excessive water intake. When the carrier-based planes of the German Navy finished dropping their bombs and swaggered away, the Royal Navy fleet on the sea was deeply shocked. A round of attacks by the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft force cost them 1 battleship, and 2 battleships were severely damaged. This undoubtedly cast a shadow over their hearts in this naval battle. Your Excellency, Commander, I have to admit that the Germans are already far ahead of us. While we were still thinking about how to build warships with stronger firepower and stronger defenses to catch up with the Germans, they have already. It has completed a gorgeous transformation, and it has actually applied the aircraft to naval warfare and achieved extremely good results. It seems that the Royal Navy has already carried it after hundreds of years of dominating the world, which makes the Germans surpass us. This in one battle, we were not wronged. Lieutenant General David Beatty sighed. General John Jellicoe nodded, although he didn't want to admit it, but it was the fact. The Germans once again came to the front of the United Kingdom and actually began to use aircraft to attack surface warships. This is something that the British Navy never thought of. This also puts them in a more disadvantageous position in this war. If you want to win this war, it will undoubtedly be more difficult. This method of using aircraft to attack a surface fleet is indeed unheard of. It is indeed admirable that the Germans have come up with such a combat method. If the British Empire can achieve a breakthrough in this area, it may turn our defeat into victory. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Even at this time, he has not given up on defeating the Germans. Your Excellency, Commander, this is very difficult. We don't know how the German planes can fly such a long distance. In other words, they took off from the sea at all. If we want to figure this out, we need to study. It will undoubtedly take a long time to come out and form combat effectiveness. The Germans will never give us that much time. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. As soon as he said this, Admiral John Jellicoe's eyes dimmed. Indeed, Germany has too great an advantage in this regard. If the UK wants to catch up, it will undoubtedly start from scratch. What's more, Germany has already occupied an absolute advantage in this war. Therefore, they will never give the UK a chance to catch up with them. Your Excellency, the German planes flew away, and we lost a lot. However, the German planes seem to be only capable of carrying light torpedoes, so they can only launch an attack on the Bellerophon class battleships. This is already the luckiest of misfortunes. If the German planes can launch an attack on our super dreadnoughts, it will be truly deadly. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Yes, God bless the British Empire. British aircraft cannot pose a threat to our main battleship, Admiral John Jellicoe said. When the British rejoiced that the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft attack was over, they didn't know that the second batch of 48 carrier-based aircraft was on their way. Moreover, these 48 carrier-based aircraft are all torpedo attack aircraft carrying torpedoes. For surface warships, the threat of torpedo attack aircraft is undoubtedly much greater than fighter jets. The aviation machine guns of fighter jets can at most cause some damage to the personnel on the battleship, but cannot pose a threat to the hull structure. However, the torpedoes carried by torpedo attack aircraft can pose a fatal threat to surface warships. Even light aviation torpedoes are equally deadly. Once the carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy can carry medium-sized or even heavy aviation torpedoes, they will be the real killers at sea, and will become a deadly threat to surface warships. However, due to technological reasons, the German Navy has not been able to succeed in this regard. "General, the German plane is coming again," a British officer shouted loudly. General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty immediately rushed to the window, picked up the binoculars, and looked towards the east sky. I saw that dozens of planes were flying towards them, and the torpedoes hanging under the belly of the planes were shining with cold edges. Damn it. There are at least 40 or 50 planes here. Where did these German planes take off from? Before the German Navy's aircraft had caused them to lose one battleship, and 2 battleships were sunk. Now, dozens of planes have appeared. Wouldn't they have to pay even greater losses? Chapter 443, Lost. Dozens of German planes once again flew over the head of the British fleet, which caused panic in the British fleet. Many warships, regardless of the formation, wanted to take the road and escape. Obviously, they were all frightened by the performance of the German Navy's warships before. Start the attack. As the commanders of this batch of carrier-based aircraft fired the attack signal flare, dozens of carrier-based aircraft launched the attack with the task assigned safely. The battleships Magnificent and Reckless, which had been severely damaged, could not escape. These carrier-based aircraft also know what it means to beat a dog in the water. The 8 torpedo attack aircraft were divided into 2 groups and launched attacks on the battleship Magnificent and the battleship Reckless respectively. These 2 battleships had been severely damaged before, and there was too much water, which seriously affected the speed of the battleships. When the speed slows down, it will undoubtedly be even more unable to resist the attacks of these torpedo attacks aircraft. The battleship Magnificent suffered 2 torpedoes again. This made the torpedo, which was already severely damaged, involuntarily become more injured. The final result also sank into the sea due to too much water. The battleship Reckless was even more unlucky. Among the 4 torpedoes fired by the 4 torpedo attack aircraft, 3 of them scored hits. Although it was only a light torpedo, it was also enough to kill the battleship Reckless. This battleship sank into the sea even before the battleship Magnificent. The 3 Bellerophon-class battleships of the British Navy were all eliminated by the carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy. And this is just the beginning. There are also 40 torpedo attack aircraft, which are continuing to attack the warships of the British Navy. After the Bellerophon-class battleships were all sunk, the St. Vincent-class battleships also became the targets of these carrier-based aircraft. Although the St. Vincent-class battleship is an improved version of the Bellerophon-class battleship, many optimizations and improvements have been made. However, the changes are not major. Standard displacement of the St. Vincent-class battleship has increased to 20,000 tons, which is more than 1,000 tons more than that of the Bellerophon-class battleship. However, in defense, the battleships of the St. Vincent class are exactly the same as the battleships of the Bellerophon class. In this case, it will naturally make the St. Vincent class battleship unable to withstand the attacks of these carrier-based aircraft. Damn it, the Bellerophon class battleships have all been sunk. The target of the German planes has shifted to the St. Vincent class battleships. The St. Vincent class battleships are probably ships that cannot withstand the Germans. Attacked by the aircraft, Lieutenant General David Beatty exclaimed. Admiral John Jellicoe's complexion became darker and darker. The German Navy clearly wanted to get rid of their capital ships step by doing this. In the end, the remaining capital ships will be handed over to their main fleet to solve. After the strength of the British Navy was weakened to the extreme, it was naturally impossible to cause any casualties to the German Navy. Damn Germans, what a vicious tactic. Admiral John Jellicoe couldn't help cursing. Although Admiral John Jellicoe had guessed the tactics of the German Navy, he had no way to stop it. Just like the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft attacked their battleships from the air, they can only watch the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft show off their power, and there is nothing they can do. The battleship St. Vincent has reached its highest speed. However, in front of the torpedo, this speed is still not enough. Under the threat of torpedoes, the battleship St. Vincent rushed left and right, like a mad bull. However, under the threat of the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft, no matter how the battleship St. Vincent resisted, it still could not escape the fate of being sunk. 4 torpedo attack aircraft approached the port side of the battleship St. Vincent and dropped torpedoes only 800 meters away from the battleship. 4 light torpedoes rushed towards the battleship St. Vincent quickly. Even though the St. Vincent made an emergency evasion immediately, it was still useless. 4 torpedoes, 2 hits. A torpedo tore a wide asterisk at the waterline. The other one was even more ruthless, hitting the stern of the ship and directly blowing up the steering gear, making the battleship St. Vincent lose the ability to turn and become a living target. Sure enough, in the subsequent attack, the 4 torpedoes launched by the 4 torpedo attack aircraft all hit the battleship St. Vincent, directly destroying all the underwater armor on its port side. A large amount of seawater was crazily poured into the battleship St. Vincent. In just a few minutes, the battleship St. Vincent lost its balance due to too much water entering on one side and capsized on the sea. The other 2 battleships of the St. Vincent class, the battleship Collingwood and the battleship Avantgarde, were also besieged by carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy. The weak defense made them unable to resist even light aviation torpedoes, which caused the 2 battleships to fail to survive. Among them, the battleship Collingwood hit a full 7 torpedoes before sinking into the sea. The battleship Avantgarde suffered 5 torpedoes, but also sank due to too much water. After sinking all the St. Vincent class battleships, the German Navy's carrier-based air force also finished throwing all the torpedoes. Begin to evacuate. Of course, among the remaining battleships of the British Navy, the light torpedoes of the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft can only threaten the battleship Hercules at best. The battleship Hercules belongs to the second ship of the giant battleship. The first battleship Giant was severely damaged when the submarine of the German Navy attacked Scapa Flow. It is under repair and cannot participate in this battle. Among the displacement of the Giant class is only a few hundred tons more than that of the St. Vincent class. Their defenses are also similar. If it is attacked by the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft force, it is still a dead end. The carrier-based aircraft force of the German Navy divided into 2 batches of attacks, directly killing 3 Bellerophon-class battleships and 3 St. Vincent-class battleships of the British Navy. The entire British Navy's 5th battleship squadron was wiped out. In addition, the 2nd battleship squadron was severely damaged, and 2 ships were sunk, leaving only 3 battleship squadrons in the British Navy's capital ship force, with a total of 14 battleships. And what they have to face is the 24 battleships and 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy. Chapter 444, No Escape. Aboard the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the British Navy's Grand Fleet, Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty were silent for a long time, and their faces were very ugly. After the loss of 3 Bellerophon-class battleships and 3 St. Vincent-class battleships, this is undoubtedly worse for the British Navy. Including the previous losses, there are only 14 warships left that they can continue to fight. Your Excellency, why don't we retreat immediately before the main force of the Germans arrives? Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Now, it can be said that he has no confidence in winning at all point, although the remaining 14 battleships of the Royal Navy, including 6 Revenge-class battleships, 1 King George V battleship, 3 Orion-class battleships, a Gincourt battleship, Island the battleship HMS Canada, the battleship Canada and the battleship Hercules are all considered capital battleships. However, compared with the main battleships of the German Navy, the gap is still too large. Before the battle began, Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty both believed that they could sink at least 15 capital ships of the German Navy. But now, they only have 14 battleships left, and they have to face more than twice the siege of the capital ships of the German Navy. Under such circumstances, how could it be possible to sink so many battleships of the German Navy? It can be said that from this time on, their plan has completely failed. Even if the Royal Navy fleet fights until the entire army is wiped out, the damage caused to the German Navy will be very limited. Churchill's plan to severely damage the German Navy by sacrificing the Royal Navy's large fleet and create favorable opportunities for subsequent operations proved to be simply unworkable. The German Navy relied on its strong strength and advanced tactics, enabling them to defeat the Royal Navy at a very small cost. After the German Navy won this battle, they will become the well-deserved maritime supremacy. It will be very difficult for other countries to challenge Germany's hegemony. Of course, countries may not have the courage at all. As for the remaining huge pre-dreadnought ships in the UK, if they are sent to the battlefield, there is no doubt that there is only one dead end. In front of the cutting-edge battleships of the German Navy, even though there were a large number of those former dreadnoughts, they were all sunk in the end. However, it might be impossible to retreat now. Admiral John Jellicoe thought that, since the German Navy had already planned this series of tactics, how could it be possible for them to escape again? General Betty, escaping is simply not feasible. Don't forget, not far from us, there are still 12 German battle cruisers watching. Even with our current strength, even those 12 battle cruisers may not be able to beat it. Admiral John Jellicoe said dejectedly. Indeed, among the 12 battle cruisers of the German Navy, 6 are equipped with 380mm main guns, and their combat effectiveness is no worse than their Revenge class. The other 6 ships are also cutting-edge warships. Although the Royal Navy still has 14 battleships, it is almost impossible to win the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy. David Betty Lieutenant General was immediately speechless. He had to admit that, if the battlecruiser formation of the German Navy launched an attack, relying on 14 battleships, they might not necessarily be able to win. After all, the capital ships of the German Navy are too powerful. Whether they are battlecruisers or battleships, their performance is very powerful. This point, the Royal Navy, which has suffered heavy losses under the attack of the German Navy, should be very clear. Your Excellency, we still have so many cruisers and destroyers. Lightning strikes alone are enough to break through the German interception. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Admiral John Jellicoe still shook his head. I know, you don't want to see the elite of the Royal Navy buried here. But now we can't escape. Don't forget, the German main fleet has not appeared. We have been spotted by them for such a long time. The main German fleet, there is no way that it has not arrived. If I did not guess, the British main fleet of the Germans went around to our north. So, our retreat has been blocked. If we want to break out from other places, the German battlecruiser formation will definitely entangle us. At that time, we will be attacked by the Germans on both sides, and soon will be completely defeated by them. David Beatty will be reluctant and nodded. He knew John Jellicoe Admiral said is right. Now they should have fallen into the trap of the Germans. The Germans orchestrated this decisive battle, from sending warships to bombard Edinburgh, forcing the main force of the Royal Navy to go to sea for a decisive battle, and then targeting their battlecruiser units, and then dispatching planes to weaken the strength of the Royal Navy's main fleet. In the end, it was time for all the main fleet of the German Navy to be dispatched, and all the main fleet of the Royal Navy should be eliminated in one fell swoop. Now, the German Navy has completed the first few steps, and the last step is left to encircle and wipe out the remaining warships of the British Navy's main fleet. How could the German Navy give up this step and let them go? This is simply impossible. Now, we have to keep fighting. Hope God can bless us and sink as many German warships as possible. This is the only thing we can do for the British Empire. John Jellicoe entered will say. Lieutenant General David Beatty sadly discovered that they really seemed to have only this way to choose. Admiral John Jellicoe did not guess that the main force of the High Seas Fleet led by Admiral Ryan Share had already circled to the north of the main British Navy fleet. If the British Navy goes north, it will meet them just in time. At that time, the German Navy will undoubtedly be able to wait for work, defeat the British Navy in one fell swoop, and destroy all their remaining warships. However, no matter how John Jellicoe chooses, the current main fleet of the Royal Navy seems to have no other options. Facing the German Navy, which already had an absolute advantage in Germany, their fate in this naval battle seems to have been decided, that is, to be defeated, and most likely to be wiped out. Except for the battlecruiser Tiger and the battleship Queen Elizabeth that had withdrawn from the battlefield before, the rest of the battleships probably would not be able to escape. Chapter 445, The Main Showdown. On the flagship aircraft carrier pioneer of the German Navy aircraft carrier formation, the commander of the formation, Marshal Prince Heinrich, is waiting for the fleet to return. Although, in the previous training, the performance of the carrier-based aircraft unit was very good. However, before he really succeeded, he was also a little worried. After all, this is actual combat, not the previous exercise training. However, the appearance of the German Navy aircraft carrier fleet this time can be described as perfect. The 24 fighter jets and 72 torpedo attack planes launched from the 2 aircraft carriers directly sank 6 battleships of the British Navy without any losses. Because the British fleet has no weapons capable of shooting into the air at all, these carrier-based aircraft can leave swaggeringly after launching an attack. An hour later, the first batch of carrier-based aircraft to take off returned one after another. At the same time, Marshal Prince Heinrich also learned of the battle. After knowing that they had sunk the battleship Bellerophon of the British Navy, and also severely damaged the battleships Magnificent and Reckless, Prince Marshal Heinrich had been hanging in his heart, and finally put it back. It's in the stomach. The first batch of carrier-based aircraft to take off is half of fighters and half of torpedo attack aircraft. The second batch of carrier-based aircraft that took off were all torpedo attack aircraft. No need to think about it, the second batch of carrier-based aircraft will definitely achieve greater results. Sure enough, before the second batch of carrier-based aircraft returned, Marshal Prince Heinrich learned of their results. Not only the battleships Magnificent and Reckless were sunk, but also 3 Street Vincent class battleships were also sunk. This is undoubtedly a very perfect victory for the aircraft carrier fleet. On the battleship Bavaria, the flagship of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet, Admiral Reinhard Scheer's face was full of smiles. His Royal Highness said it well. The combination of an aircraft carrier and a carrier-based aircraft is indeed the absolute main force of future naval warfare. Right now, only a carrier-based aircraft that can only carry light aviation torpedoes can play such a big role. Wait until the future with the development of carrier-based aircraft capable of carrying medium-sized torpedoes and heavy-duty torpedoes. Wouldn't the power of carrier-based aircraft be further improved? Fortunately, the Imperial Navy once again came to the forefront of the world. Before they thought of this aspect, we already have the most mature and powerful aircraft carrier formation in the world. Admiral Reinhard Scheer sighed. As the commander of the High Seas Fleet, Admiral Reinhard Scheer admired Qin Tian's forward vision very much. The German Navy has become extremely powerful because of Qin Tian. Otherwise, they would never have had the opportunity to beat the Royal Navy like now. Not to mention, Qin Tian has also planned the future development path of the German Navy, which will make it easier for the German Navy to consolidate its maritime hegemony in the future. Once the German Navy has a larger aircraft carrier fleet and more advanced carrier-based aircraft, will other countries still have a chance to challenge the German Empire's maritime hegemony? That is obviously impossible. Although, the German Navy now only has 2 aircraft carriers. However, the next batch of 4 new aircraft carriers is already under construction. The new type of aircraft carrier will have a larger displacement and be able to carry more fighters, so it will naturally have more powerful attack power. Your Excellency Commander, His Royal Highness asked, is there a need for an aircraft carrier to launch a second strike? The staff officer reported to Admiral Reinhard Scheer. Tell His Royal Highness, it will not be used for the time being. The British have not many battleships left. What's more, except for the battleship Hercules, the rest of the warships are super dreadnoughts with stronger defense. The carrier-based aircraft, it is difficult to pose any threat to light aviation torpedoes. The next battle will be left to us. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, General. The staff officer immediately went to send a telegram. Admiral Reinhard Scheer had another meaning in mind. That is, if all the warships of the British Navy were sunk by the carrier-based aircraft of the carrier, then what would be the result of their more than 20 battleships? Didn't get any? They went out to sea with such great fanfare for a decisive battle with the British Navy, but in the end they just went out to sea for fun. In that case, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? Order the battle cruiser formation and continue to monitor the British. The main fleet will immediately go south and prepare for a decisive battle with the British. Now, the British have only 14 battleships left. The final victory must belong to us. Rear Admiral Teshire is full of confidence in this. Among the remaining 14 battleships of the British Navy, there are 6 Revenge-class battleships, 3 Orion-class battleships, plus King George V, Agincourt Island HMS Canada and HMS Hercules. Although its strength is not weak, it is undoubtedly much inferior to the main force of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet. Among the 24 battleships of the High Seas Fleet, 5 Bavaria-class battleships and 5 King-class battleships are equipped with 380mm main guns, 5 Caesar-class battleships and 5 Helgoland-class. The battleships are all equipped with 343mm main guns, and the 4 Nassau-class battleships are all equipped with 305mm main guns. Compared with the British Royal Navy's Grand Fleet, the German Navy's High Seas Fleet has an absolute advantage not only in the number of battleships. In terms of single ship performance, it also has an overwhelming advantage. Although the Royal Navy still has a numerical advantage in small and medium warships, however, relying on those battleships alone to defeat the mighty High Seas Fleet is undoubtedly a dream. Therefore, Reinhard can confidently believe that they will win the next battle. Under the command of Admiral Reinhard, the main fleet of the High Seas Fleet began to move south rapidly. The officers and soldiers of the German Navy were full of fighting spirit. They seemed to be ready to welcome a brilliant victory that would send the German Navy to the overlord of Shanghai. On the other side, Admiral John Jellicoe, commander of the British Navy Grand Fleet, is also waiting for this final decisive battle. Although he knew that relying on the remaining warships of the Royal Navy, it was impossible to defeat the German Navy. However, he hopes to fight the German Navy to the death, and both sides will suffer. At 12 noon, the main force of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet appeared on the battlefield. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, The Strongest Collision. Command the fleet, prepare for battle. The glory of the Royal Navy of the British Empire, fight here. Admiral John Jellicoe issued a combat order. David, Lieutenant General Betty, said nothing, but his face was very serious. He knew that this might be the last naval battle in his life. Although facing a powerful enemy, the officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy still showed an extremely tenacious will to fight. The spirit passed down from Nelson's time has always inspired them. Under the command of Admiral John Jellicoe, the Royal Navy is ready for the last fight. 14 battleships lined up in a long battle line. At the beginning, there are 5 Revenge-class battleships, followed by the King George V battleship, followed by 3 Orion-class battleships, followed by the Agincourt battleship, HMS Ireland and HMS Canada, and finally HMS Hercules. Facing the several kilometer-long battle line of the British Navy, Admiral Reinhard also made a choice immediately. The first battle line consists of the Bavaria-class battleships, the Caesar-class battleships and the Nassau-class battleships, the King-class battleships, the Helgoland-class battleships and the battlecruiser formations, the 3 Mackensen-class battlecruisers and the No. 2 battlecruiser Lutzow among the Derfliner-class battlecruisers that were transferred form the second battle line. 2 battle lines, flank the British. Admiral Reinhard ordered. If the German Navy adds battle cruisers, the number of capital ships is fully twice that of the remaining capital ships of the Royal Navy. So, this allowed them to form 2 lines of battle against the British Navy. Although, battle cruisers do not seem to be suitable for decisive battles on the battle line. However, it has undoubtedly been proved in previous naval battles that the battle cruisers of the German Navy are no worse than the battleships of the British Navy in terms of defense. It is completely possible to confront the British battleship. Under such circumstances, the German Navy is naturally in a position to win. As for the remaining 8 battle cruisers, they were led by Lieutenant General Maximilian von Spee. Their task was to deal with the small and medium-sized warships of the British Navy, including armored cruisers, light cruisers and destroyers. There are hundreds of small and medium-sized warships in the British Navy. If they launch a lightning strike regardless of casualties, it will undoubtedly be a huge threat to the main fleet of the German Navy. when I saw that the German Navy had formed two battle lines, intending to attack the British Navy. The faces of Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David couldn't help but become very ugly. There is no doubt that the German Navy is preparing to bully them by fighting more and fighting less. Shameless Germans, don't they dare to fight us upright? They actually adopted such a despicable and shameless tactic. Lieutenant General David Beatty couldn't help but cursed. Although Admiral John Jellicoe was not like Lieutenant General David Beatty, he felt very aggrieved. Attack the German flagship first, and then deal with another battle line. This time, we must do our best. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered through gritted teeth. Yes, General. The order was conveyed immediately. The officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy are already filled with righteous indignation, and are ready to fight the German Navy to the death. At 12:34, the battle officially began. The first battle line of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet started its attack first. It will take some time for the second battle line to go around to the other side of the British Navy. Of course, in order to avoid being flanked as much as possible, the British Royal Navy is also constantly increasing their speed, trying to get rid of the pursuit of the German Navy's second battle line. However, in terms of speed, the battleships of the British Royal Navy do not have the slightest advantage. This makes it impossible for them to get rid of the double attack of the German Navy. At most, they just hold on for a little longer. Boom. 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 The battleship Bavaria, the flagship of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet, opened fire first, and three triple-mounted 50 caliber 380mm main guns began to roar. Cannonballs weighing more than a ton roared and smashed towards the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the Royal Navy. The Bavaria-class battleship and the Revenge-class battleship represent the strongest warships of the German Navy and the British Navy respectively. Now, the two battleships are finally about to start their final duel. Fire. The British Royal Navy immediately launched a counterattack. Although the current distance is more than 15 kilometers, for large caliber naval guns, this is already within their effective attack range. However, at such a long distance, it is very difficult to get a hit. Although both sides were just testing fire, the shelling was not too violent. However, the entire sea is still rumbling with gunfire, which is very intense. Bavaria-class battleship, as the most powerful first-class battleship of the German Navy, although the key data is similar to the King-class battleship. However, what is more powerful than the King-class battleship is the improvement of the soft power of the battleship. The sighting equipment and fire control system are all state-of-the-art. In addition, the Bavarian-class battleships are also equipped with semi-automatic loading machines, which greatly reduces the firing time of the Bavarian-class battleships. If it takes 1.5 minutes for the King-class battleship to fire a salvo, then it only takes 1 minute for the Bavaria-class battleship. Before there is no precision-guided weapon, it is undoubtedly necessary to hit the target and increase the output of firepower. The more shells fired, the higher the hit rate will naturally be. Coupled with being able to aim more accurately, the possibility of naturally hitting the target is greatly improved. Battle just started. John Jellicoe Admiral and David Beatty Lieutenant General felt this. How could the huge warships of the German Navy on the opposite side fire so fast? Oh my god. The German Bavarian-class battleships have an average rate of fire of 1 round per minute, right? How is this possible? Lieutenant General David Beatty looked shocked. You know, their Revenge-class battleships also need 1.5 minutes or even 2 minutes to be able to fire a salvo. Admiral John Jellicoe's heart kept sinking, because he found that the disadvantage of the Royal Navy seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Chapter 447, Suppression. Boom. 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 The heavy shell hit the sea surface fiercely, splashing a column of water soaring into the sky, just like a whale spouting water. Occasionally there are sea fish that were killed by the bombing and bathed the surface of the water. The war between humans has implicated these innocent marine life. The German Navy and the British Navy are engaged in a life and death battle in this sea area, which makes the sea area that was not peaceful before even more uneasy. When the shelling of both sides just started, they were just testing. In order to save shells, only when a straddle is formed during the test firing, or a direct hit is achieved, it will be switched to concentrated fire shooting. It's just that the Bavarian class battleships of the German Navy, which have new sighting equipment and fire control systems, obviously have a lot of advantages in this regard. Boom. A shell exploded on the sea surface on the right side of the battleship Ramillis, splashing a water column more than 10 meters high. Although, the place where the shell exploded was more than 100 meters away from the battleship Ramillis, it did not cause any damage to the battleship. However, the expressions of the more than 900 officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy on the battleship changed dramatically. Because this shell represents that the battleship Saxony of the German Navy that was bombarding them has formed a straddle. This is also the lifespan, and the battleship Saxon has already aimed at them. The reason why he didn't make a hit was just a little bit of luck. Next, as long as the Saxon battleship fires with concentrated fire, if the dense shells hit hard, it should be able to get a hit soon. Asterisk 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 asterisk. How is this possible? The Germans formed straddle shots within 10 minutes of the battle. Lieutenant General David Beatty was inexplicably horrified. Although they have always believed that the quality of soldiers in the Royal Navy is definitely the best in the world. However, the Royal Navy has not been able to have such an excellent performance, let alone the Germans. In the eyes of Lieutenant General David Beatty and other proud generals of the Royal Navy, the German Navy was just an upstart, and there was no big deal at all. John. Admiral Jellicoe, although not like David Beatty, Lieutenant General so gaff. However, his heart also cannot be calm. As the saying goes, a century-old navy means that it takes hundreds of years to build a powerful navy. However, it has been such a long time since the development of the German Navy to the present, and it has only been 20 years since the German Navy began to rise to the present. They were actually able to perform better than the Royal Navy on the battlefield. This is undoubtedly very shocking. Of course, Admiral John Jellicoe knew that it was all because of technology. The advancement of science and technology has made many things that require a lot of experience to do well become very simple. Therefore, the German Navy was able to challenge the British Navy in such a short period of time. Good job. Let the battleship Saxon sink the British warship in the shortest possible time. Admiral Reinhard Scheer was very happy. There is nothing more pleasing to the eye than watching the German Navy gradually gaining an absolute advantage in this naval battle. The German naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Saxony are also excited at the moment. The captain, Colonel Connex Longhart, has given the order to focus fire. The 3 triple-mounted main guns started a volley with the maximum rate of fire. In each round of volley, 9 shells weighing more than a ton slammed into the battleship Ramillis fiercely. A large number of shells exploded around the battleship Ramillis, splashing high water columns. This is undoubtedly a great blow to the fighting will of the British naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Ramillis. After all, if they were hit, they would probably die. Fear of this kind of death will make people panic from the heart, and thus, it will also have a certain impact on the combat effectiveness of the battleship. The battleship Saxon took the lead in switching to salvo, which also aroused the fighting spirit of other German naval warships. Gunners, do your best to form a straddle, and then move into salvo. Although, the British Royal Navy also made every effort to fight back. However, God does not seem to be on their side, or their luck is slightly worse. There have been many rounds of test firing, and no straddle can be formed. In less than 5 minutes, the battleship Württemberg of the German Navy also successfully straddled the battleship Sovereign of the British Navy and switched to concentrated fire. Immediately afterwards, the other warships of the German Navy also formed straddles one after another, and then began to focus their fire. On the British Navy side, only a very small number of battleships completed straddle shooting and began to switch to focused fire. Judging from the current battlefield situation, there is no doubt that the British Navy is in a state of being suppressed. This is only the reason why the first battle line of the German Navy fought them. When the second battle line comes from another direction and flanks them, that is when the Royal Navy is in real crisis. Damn. Why can't we get hits for so long? As time went on, the battle situation became more and more unfavorable for the Royal Navy, and Admiral John Jellicoe seemed to have lost his patience. Boom. 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 The Royal Navy's Revenge battleship, another round of test firing conducted, and 4 381mm artillery shells slammed into the German Navy's flagship Bavaria battleship. This time, God seemed to have heard the prayers of the British naval officers and soldiers. During this round of test firing, a shell flew over the battleship Bavaria and exploded on the sea surface on the left side of the battleship. Long live. We have straddled. The officers and soldiers of the Royal Navy on the battleship Revenge cheered. Admiral John Jellicoe finally revealed a smile. Although the German Navy formed a straddle shot before them, they failed to score a hit after all. This means that the two sides are once again standing on the same starting line. As long as their luck is better in the next battle, it is not impossible to get the first hit. However, Admiral John Jellicoe's delusions were quickly shattered. At 12:54, the battleship Sachsen of the German Navy lived up to expectations and scored a hit in this round of salvo. This was also the first hit of a battleship of the German Navy in this naval battle. Chapter 448, Close Shooting. Boom. A huge explosion sounded on the battleship Ramillies of the British Navy, and the entire battleship seemed to shake. A 380mm artillery shell fired from the battleship Sachsen hit the tall superstructure of the battleship Ramillies. The 380mm armor-piercing projectile has strong armor-piercing ability, easily penetrates the outer armor and explodes inside. The huge power directly destroyed the top of the superstructure of the battleship Ramillies, and at the same time, caused a raging fire. The scattered debris fell, and injured many British naval soldiers. What's more terrible is that the sighting equipment and ranging equipment installed on the top of the superstructure were all destroyed. This directly reduced the shooting accuracy of the battleship Ramillies to an unbearable level. Fighting at a distance of more than 10 kilometers, if there is no sighting equipment and ranging equipment, and only rely on human eyes and experience to shoot, if you want to hit the target, unless it is God's miracle, otherwise, it is simply impossible. Your Excellency, the Ramillies is no longer able to aim at the target on the opposite side. Their shooting is a waste of shells. If possible, let the Ramillies withdraw from the battle, and wait for it to return to Hong Kong to repair it. After the sighting and ranging equipment, continue to fight, a staff officer suggested. After all, the current battleship Ramillies has completely become a soy sauce roll. It is undoubtedly the best choice to let it withdraw from the battle. That way, we can keep him. Otherwise, in the fierce battle with the Germans, it might be hit soon. In that case, it would be very uneconomical. However, General John Jellicoe did not adopt this suggestion. Of course he knew that the advice of the staff officer was for the good of the Royal Navy. However, he has his own plans. Let the Ramillies continue to fight. Even if they are used to attract the artillery fire of a German capital ship, that would be good. Admiral John Jellicoe ordered. Yes, General. Although the staff officer was a little puzzled, he did not refute. The reason why Admiral John Jellicoe issued such an order is that there is no other way. Originally, the Royal Navy was inferior to the German Navy in terms of the number of capital ships. If the latex tube Ramillies withdraws from the battle again, this will give them a greater advantage in numbers. At that time, another battleship of the German Navy will be able to cooperate with other battleships to flank other battleships of the Royal Navy. This is undoubtedly very detrimental to the Royal Navy. However, what Admiral John Jellicoe didn't know was that his order soon determined the fate of the battleship Ramillies. Very good. I didn't expect the battleship Sachsen to perform so well in this naval battle. Admiral Reinhard Scheer was very satisfied with the performance of the battleship Sachsen. Your Excellency, Colonel Longheart requests that the distance between us and the battleship Ramillies of the British Navy be shortened. A staff officer reported. Admiral Reinhard Scheer hesitated for a moment, then nodded, and approved Colonel Cornix Longhart's request. He knew Colonel Cornix Longhart's intentions, and he undoubtedly wanted to seize this opportunity to shorten the shooting distance to further increase the hit rate. Thus, in the shortest possible time, the battleship Ramillies of the British Navy was sunk. Such tactics are undoubtedly very good. After all, when the sighting and ranging equipment of the battleship Ramillies were destroyed, even if the battleship Sachsen zoomed in to shoot at a distance of 10,000 meters, the Ramillies would still be very difficult. Hard to hit Sachsen. However, if the battleship Saxon takes the initiative to shorten the distance, it is very likely that it will be besieged by other battleships of the British Navy. After all, this is not fighting alone, but in the middle of the battle line. The battleship Resolution in front of the battleship Ramillies and the battleship Monarchy behind are not vegetarians, and they will definitely not miss this good opportunity. However, even so, Admiral Reinhard Scheer agreed to this somewhat risky tactic. After all, in a naval battle, great risk means great reward. If the battleship Saxony can severely damage, or even sink the battleship Ramillies, this will further increase the German Navy's advantage in this battle. Even if the British Navy wanted to escape, it was impossible. Order the warship to turn. Colonel Langhood immediately gave the order to turn. After receiving the flagship's reply telegram, the battleship Saxon began to leave the queue, approaching the battleship Ramillies. What do the Germans want to do? The British naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Ramillies all shouted, after seeing the abnormal behavior of the battleship Saxon. Other battleships of the British Navy also discovered this situation. Damn it, the Germans are obviously deceiving people too much. Do they want to sink the Ramillies immediately? Lieutenant General David Beatty was very angry. Arrogant Germans, their behavior is completely looking for death. Order the battleship Resolution and the battleship Sovereign to abandon the opposite target and sink the German battleship that is looking for death first. Sink this battleship. This maybe it can get us out of the immediate predicament. Admiral John Jellicoe also immediately issued an order. It's just that it is obviously impossible for the two battleships to change their shooting targets and then achieve a hit in a short period of time. It will take time to conduct the test firing again, and then switch to concentrated fire shooting after the test firing is successful. It is true that the battleship Saxon took the initiative to shorten the distance and improve their hit rate, but those steps are indispensable. The battleship Saxon may have been able to use this time to send the battleship Ramillies of the British Navy into the seabed to feed the fish in one fell swoop. Fire. At a distance of only 12,000 meters from the Ramillies, Colonel Cornix Langhood gave the order to fire. 3 triple-mounted 380mm main guns continued to fire fiercely at the battleship Ramillies. At the same time, the battleship Saxon is still further closing the distance with the Ramillies. Their ultimate goal is to shorten the engagement distance to 10,000 meters. Chapter 449, Multi-Turret Cult. Arsehole. Damn the Germans. Fire and sink them. The captain of the battleship Ramillies was furious. The behavior of the battleship Saxon is completely provocative to them. The 4 twin 381mm main guns of the battleship Ramillies began to fight back violently. However, because the gunner can only aim by himself, therefore, the impact point of the shell is very far away from the battleship Saxon. The farthest point of impact was even 500 meters away. Such shelling made the Royal Navy itself feel ashamed. In contrast, the battleship Saxon of the German Navy performed very well. Although it failed to hit the battleship Ramillies, the impact point was not far away. After receiving the order from Admiral John Jellicoe, the battleships Resolution and Sovereign of the British Navy gave up the bombardment of the battleships Baden and Württemberg and turned to fire on the battleship Saxon in an attempt to rescue the battleship Ramillies, which was at a disadvantage. Order the Baden and Württemberg continue to bombard the Resolution and the Sovereign and take advantage of this rare opportunity to severely damage the British. Admiral Reinhard Scheer ordered. He did not change the previously set strategy because of the tactics of the British Navy. After all, it is not so easy for the British Navy's Resolution and Sovereignty to hit the German Navy's Saxon in a short period of time. Boom. 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 The battle between the two sides became more and more intense. Shells exploded continuously on the sea surface, revealing to people how tragic this naval battle was. On the battle line of the British Navy, the most amazing performance is undoubtedly the battleship Agincourt. This battleship, originally built for Brazil, has as many as 7 main turrets, with a total of 14 305mm main guns. On a battleship with a standard displacement of only more than 27,000 tons, the installation of so many main turrets certainly makes this battleship have very powerful firepower. However, the price paid is unstable navigation and weak armor. especially in terms of armor. The armor of the battleship Agincourt is not much thicker than that of the battle cruisers of the British Navy. The armor of the waterline main armor belt is only 9 inches, or 228 millimeters, at its thickest point. The armor of the turret is only 10 inches, or 254 millimeters, and the armor of the conning tower is 11 inches, or 280 millimeters. As for the armor deck, it is only 1 inch, as thin as a piece of paper. Once this kind of defense is hit, there is no doubt that there is only one result, which is to be easily torn apart and then cause heavy damage. However, at least on the surface, the battleship Agincourt is undoubtedly full of vitality. 7 main turrets, firing continuously. Cannonballs were continuously fired at the German Navy's Prince Regent Luitpold, splashing jets of water around it. Although, the battleship Luitpold Regent has only 3 triple-mounted 343mm main guns, which is 5 fewer than the Agincourt. But the 343mm main gun with 50 times the caliber is much more powerful than the 305mm main gun with 45 times the caliber. Especially when the armor of the battleship Agincourt is so weak. Once it is hit by the battleship Luitpold Regent, it will be enough to cause serious damage to it. Boom. 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 The German naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Prince Regent Luitpold were not frightened by the powerful firepower of the battleship Agincourt. They were still firing methodically. After forming a straddle long ago, the battleship Prince Regent of Luitpold has already switched to a salvo. However, it has never been able to get a hit. However, many times good luck comes inadvertently. During the salvo of the Luitpold Regent, a shell hit the stern of the battleship Agincourt. 3 of the 7 main turrets of the Agincourt battleship are deployed on the stern. The 3 main turrets at the stern are in the shape of a pyramid, high in the middle and low in the front and back. This allows the 3 main turrets to shoot in the same direction. However, the deployment of so many dense main guns poses a greater threat. The 343mm shell has a huge armor-piercing ability under the action of huge kinetic energy. In particular, the armor of the battleship Agincourt was already very weak, and it was easily torn apart. This shell hit the number 6 main turret of the Agincourt, which is the main turret named Saturday. The 7 main turrets of the battleship Agincourt, named Monday to Saturday. Sunday. The armor with a thickness of only 254mm was easily torn apart in front of the 343mm shells like paper. After the shell penetrated the turret, it did not explode immediately, but continued downward, piercing the fire door between the ammunition depot and the turret, and then exploded. The explosion immediately detonated hundreds of shells in the ammunition depot. What's more terrible is that the 3 main turrets on the stern of the Agincourt battleship are next to each other, and the 3 ammunition depots are also next to each other. The ammunition depot in the middle exploded. Can the ammunition depots on both sides survive? It just exploded. Detonation of the 3 ammunition depots is extremely powerful. The entire stern of the battleship Agincourt was destroyed in a violent explosion. If you look down from the sky, you can see the battleship Agincourt, as if it was bitten by a monster, and the stern of the ship was directly bitten off. Seawater poured into it frantically from the stern of the battleship Agincourt. The British sailors on the battleship began to scatter for their lives before they even had time to control the damage. None of them were fools, and they all knew that after suffering such heavy damage, the fate of the battleship Agincourt had almost been decided. If they stay on the battleship again, they will be killed directly like the other unlucky ones. Other officers and soldiers of the British Navy were also shocked by this situation. They really did not expect that the battleship Agincourt would be so fragile. Isn't it crazy to be killed by just being hit by a cannonball? General John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty also looked shocked. The battle has just begun. Are they going to lose a capital ship? Chapter 450, Adventure Awards. The Agincourt was sunk so easily. How can this battle continue? Lieutenant General David Beatty muttered to himself. Originally, the Royal Navy had few warships, but now that they have lost one, it will undoubtedly put them at a further disadvantage in the next battle. The battleship Agincourt was originally a deformed battleship. It was designed like this to meet the requirements of the Brazilians. In order to install so many turrets on the hull with a displacement of more than 20,000 tons, it made its armor has been extremely weakened. The 3 main turrets at the stern are even closer together. This caused it to be destroyed directly after being hit. Admiral John Jellicoe said expressionlessly. Although, the battleship Agincourt was sunk, causing them heavy losses. However, he seemed to have expected such a moment. Originally, the battleship Agincourt was nothing more than a foreign trade warship. If it wasn't a last resort, they wouldn't have given it service in the Royal Navy at all. It's just that the capital ship suffered heavy losses and was forced to do nothing by the Germans, so they rushed the ducks to the shelves and used the battleship Agincourt to fill the number. As a result, once on the battlefield, the performance of the battleship Agincourt was really rubbish, and it was easily sunk. Not to mention the loss of a capital ship, the British Navy also lost hundreds of elite naval officers and soldiers. Your Excellency, the Agincourt has been sunk, which will put us at a greater disadvantage on the battle line. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. General John Jellicoe nodded, but there was nothing he could do about it. Let the ships continue to fight. Find a way to sink the German warships as much as possible in the next battle. This is the only thing we can do. Admiral John Jellicoe said. Yes, Your Excellency Commander. Lieutenant General David Beatty said helplessly. On the other side, the German Navy is already cheering victory. Not long after the war started, a victory was actually achieved. This is undoubtedly a great encouragement for the German Navy. Very well done. All the officers and men of the Prince Regent of Luitpold are doing a good job. I will give credit to the Marshal. Admiral Reinhard Scheer's face was full smile. Although, he is full of confidence in this war. However, there was still some tension in his heart. Until now, seeing the German Navy's warship sinking the British warship, he completely put his heart back into his stomach. Send a telegram to the Luitpolder Regent and ask them to cooperate with the Helgoland to kill the British battleship Ireland. Admiral Reinhard Scheer ordered. The reason why he chose the battleship Ireland as the next attack target was not because of anything else, but because the battleship Ireland was also a foreign trade warship. The battleship was originally built by the British for the Ottoman Empire, but because the Royal Navy lost in the naval battle, it was detained by the British and joined the battle order of the Royal Navy. Therefore, the battleship Ireland, like other foreign trade battleships, is equipped with as powerful firepower as possible on a limited displacement, making the battleship's defense very poor. The battleship Ireland is equipped with 5 twin-mounted 343mm main guns, and its full load displacement is only 25,000 tons. In terms of defense, the thickest part of the waterline armor is 305mm, while the other turrets and command towers are only 280mm. This kind of defense is undoubtedly too weak. After the battleship Luitpold Regent joined the shooting of the battleship Ireland, it immediately put the battleship in a pincer attack. The artillery shells fired from the battleships Prince Regent and Helgoland continuously exploded water columns around the battleship Ireland. In this naval battle, the truly eye-catching battle is undoubtedly the adventurous action of the battleship Saxon. Just when the battleship Luitpold Regent killed the Agincourt, the battleship Saxon had successfully narrowed the engagement distance to 10,000 meters. At this distance, it can almost be regarded as directly hitting the belly of the battleship Ramillies with a cannon. Boom. 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 The 3 triple-mounted 380mm main guns on the battleship Saxony let out a roar that shook the sky. 9 shells weighing more than a ton slammed hard at the battleship Ramillies. This round of salvo did not score a hit. However, this does not prevent the battleship Saxon from outputting firepower to the battleship Ramillies at a rate of fire of 1 salvo per minute. Although, at this time, the battleships Resolution and Monarchy of the British Navy were also firing on the battleship Saxon in an attempt to sink the Saxon and save the Ramillies. However, they have never been able to succeed. As for the counterattack of the battleship Ramillies, it was simply ignored. After the sighting equipment and ranging equipment were destroyed, the battleship Ramillies could not hit the battleship Saxon even at a distance of 10,000 meters. Therefore, they have become soy sauce characters from beginning to end. The adventure of the battleship Saxon finally paid off handsomely. After they narrowed the combat distance to 10,000 meters, the third round of salvo scored a hit, or 380mm artillery shell slammed into the port side of the battleship Ramillies, blowing up 2 secondary guns and igniting a fire at the same time. Immediately afterwards, the 5th round of salvo scored another hit. During this round of salvo, or 380mm artillery shell hit the bow of the battleship Ramillies. Moreover, a piece of shrapnel got stuck on the rotating device of the number 2 main turret of the battleship Ramillies, causing it to lose its ability to turn. Under such circumstances, it is equivalent to losing combat power. Subsequently, the battleship Saxony also scored a hit, or 380mm artillery shell directly blew up the only chimney of the battleship Ramillies. The collapsed chimney crushed the superstructure, and at the same time hit the number 3 main turret at the stern heavily, making the main turret unable to continue firing. Although the battleship Ramillies has not been sunk, it has undoubtedly been severely damaged, and it seems that it is only a matter of time before it is sunk. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.